ongoing exercise with BPL because we continue to refine and to make sure at the end of the day the Bahamian people is getting the best for it.
Honorable members, just so we could be certain as we move forward, are we going to accept then that the plan that the member for Elizabeth has is a different plan from the one that you have? Because otherwise we will have this conflict throughout.
Well, he could table it. He could table it. Speaker, I mean, I shouldn't even be engaging him. I don't engage. Mr. Speaker, the point I wish to make here, Mr. Speaker, is that the member says that when they introduce their rate reduction plan, it will increase electricity bill an average of $20 to $30 a month. That will impact. I was about to recommend that they exercise, that they approach.
Honorable members.
That approach I cannot support. But I could tell you that with the introduction of our rate reduction bond, it was tiered in this fashion, that customers using 300 kilowatt hours will pay their increase. There will be no increase. If you're using up to 300, any kilowatt hour, you would, in fact, those persons, which makes up about 55% of the customer base of BPL, the rate was going down by $2.53 per month, or a decline of 3.76. Their bill was going down, right? Now, if you are using 600 kilowatt hours, you would have seen an increase of only $3.55 per month, not $20. Not $20. And so, Mr. Speaker, that is what, and that would impact a further close to 70% of the users, right? And so, Mr. Speaker, now, Mr. Speaker, we left that in place. We left it in place. We left in place. When we demitted office, when we were fired, right? When we were fired, you check your own bill. You will see that in April of 2017, it was at least 40% less than what you would have paid, what you would have paid in April of 2012. Let's check it. Right. So we were on the right track, and we left that all in place. We left it in place, right? We left that all in place, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker. Right? And Mr. Speaker. What we had already negotiated, was well on the way of introducing the rate reduction bond. But other options became available. Other options became available. The first option was that Power Secure, when we negotiated the management of contract with Power Secure, right? When we negotiated that, they were owned by, they were publicly traded, and they were on an independent company publicly trading on the U.S. stock.
How did they do in Harbor Island?
Eventually, Speaker, they were acquired belatedly after we would have entered into the management agreement by a large conglomerate energy company called Southern Inc., a $45 billion company. And then we engaged them. Then the question arose, in how best to deal with the legacy debt and other debts. Because with this company now owning Power Secure, we could have probably negotiated a better arrangement in respect to the rate reduction bond. And that we were embarking on that. Mr. Speaker, the other intervention, the other option that came to play was the fortress arrangement. Again, the fortress arrangement came into being, and that too caused us to pause to determine whether or not we could have done a better deal with the rate reduction bonds. So what we are looking for, Mr. Speaker, what we're looking for is the best deal for the Bahamian people.
And you did that, yes.
And
you did that.
whether we had struck that or not, we had already had in place an arrangement with Power Secure that would have produced results I've talked about. We would not have been in this place, you know. Mr. Speaker, I am confident.
Yes, you should be, yes.
I'm confident in the position I was in because, you know, we just didn't do these things in isolation. We brought along the Chamber of Commerce. And so now you hear the Chamber of Commerce telling you all that if you had left what you met in place, you will not be in a position
Honorable members,
and that's what it is, right? And so what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker. So I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, the Chamber of Commerce supports what we have to do. And so, Mr. Speaker, what we've had here today, Mr. Speaker, is a colossal...
Honorable members, you're getting louder than the member who has the floor. Carry on, Carolyn.
You know, and as I said, Mr. Speaker, when we chronicle the numerous unfortunate events of the last 30 months, it is clear that BPL, their customers, and the economy by extension would have been better off if the plans we left in place were carried forward.
Yes.
Right? As I indicated, the principal of the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce, who was the lady, what's her name? In charge of the energy section, right? She agreed with us on the way forward for energy sector reform. The handling of BPL by this government, Mr. Speaker, is shameful. It's selfish, right? And who is being left to pay for it? The Bahamian people, Mr. Speaker. And this is most unfortunate. You know, calling on the various skill sets in civil society is usually the best course of action when undertaking initiatives of this magnitude, because everybody has a stake, and everybody stands to lose if selfish, bad, and poor decisions are made, driven by cronyism and huge partisan political considerations. Mr. Speaker, you know, I wonder if the minister is aware that part of the challenges why BEC is failing. Do you know that, you know, Hasty, what's his name? Rickey Hasty. I don't like calling names in here, so I wouldn't call no names, right? I can call his name though, right? Because do you know that he's hired over 7 new executives? No, sorry, yeah, 7. One, I ain't gonna call the names now. I'll give you the names if you need them. And each of them being paid over $100,000 a year.
Honorable member for Cat Island, you didn't ask for any more time, but your time is up. You need some more time?
I appreciate that. I do appreciate that.
How much more would you? Okay.
Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Speaker, I'll provide the names that were hired by him and being paid over $100,000 if you wish.
Well, they said nothing about Upper Island, man. They still been you to talk about.
And Mr. Speaker, guess what? of all those hires, they created positions for them, except one.
Yes.
All right? Except one, the human resources person. In addition, he goes on and hires another 6 or 7 persons that all down there at Clifton Pier. Together they own. See, you're spending all these funds, paying them $100,000 base salary each. I mean, not each, sorry, together. When those who they met there together, 6 they making $30,000. So I give you the names. Right? So, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker. Oh, sorry. So the minister is aware of it. So I call the names. Right. So.
Yeah. Take it. Don't forget to.
As I said, Mr. Speaker, the handling of BPL by this government, I say it's shameful, it's selfish, and who's left to pay for it? I can't support you all putting on the backs of people, right, a cost that is directly as a result of your own mismanagement, your own policies, and incompetence. I'm not going to do that. This is most unfortunate.
You just got
Right? Mr. Speaker, all indications are that this BPL debacle today as we know it, right, BPL was the victim of selfishness, bad and poor decisions, and huge partisan political considerations. Just go and read the statement of claim in a case that's been filed against BPL. You understand that, right?
What was the problem with Harbour Island?
This government has wasted 30 months, hundreds of millions of dollars, undermined the economy, and caused undue hardship, misery, and suffering on thousands of Bahamians. Mr. Speaker, what is the plan? On the one hand, you say that Watsilla, the chairman said he found the money to pay $95 million for the Watsilla engines. The minister now is saying, well, he's going to raise it through the rate reduction bond. That's what he said. That's the question.
Honorable member, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael on a point of order.
I'll be happy to answer the question, Mr. Speaker. I specifically spoke about phase 2 of Watsilla. The current phase, those generators go on by the 15th of December. That's 132 megawatts. What we are seeking to fund now is a second phase, which will be 90 additional megawatts. And the Prime Minister and I both spoke about the fact that we want an extra 220 megawatts on this island. That will be an additional 90 megawatts of power to replace some more of those old engines that we have. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable member for Cat Island, could you wrap up now?
I'll wrap up, Mr. Speaker, just on the same question. The question is, who is funding the first phase? And where is that funding coming from? That's what I asked. Is it coming from this as well? Because it's being said to be something else. Okay.
I specifically set out in my contribution, which I shared liberally with the media, what is coming from this. And I want to make it very clear.
The first phase. I only want to know. I just want to know where is the funding for the first phase. That's all I ask.
And I will answer you. But I want us to appreciate that I put it on writing. I made sure that everybody could see that it was the second phase. Had nothing to do with the first phase of funding. It was not the same amount of megawatts of power. It's 90 megawatts of power. And on the writing, it says 2021, specifically. So I just want the Honorable Member for Cat Island to appreciate what I've said. I will answer the rest of you when I speak. I have a lot to say to you, though.
I may not be here. Mr. Speaker, I didn't get an answer. He said he'll answer. I'll wait for that answer. The other question I have for the minister, so when he speaks, is then what then became of the arrangement of the between BPL and Shell, right? And how does that fit into the arrangement with Wärtsilä. And also the question arises as to is there the mix, what I call the mixed match of generators? Are you getting Wärtsilä generators, GE generators, and how they match? Right, so, Mr. Speaker, whatever they were to say, right? There's something. I go back to some comments that was made very early in respect to what's happening at BPL. Right? You all have mishandled. You have, by canceling the arrangements, you're now trying to. This is a complete. These steps now, in our view,
Honorable member.
Honorable member could.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael.
The honorable member could speak a little longer. Can you specifically tell me which arrangement we canceled that you are speaking of, and what type of financial remuneration those persons who were not Bahamian were getting, since you spoke to the Bahamians who were getting remuneration?
Speaker, the arrangement I'm talking about was the management services agreement with Power Secure that was canceled. That had with it certain guarantees, right? The remuneration, I'm not aware specifically of those, but he would know. He would know. I decided no. I don't have it in my head now.
You don't know how much.
I don't have it now in my head. But Mr. Speaker, what I am saying, Mr. Speaker, what I
Honorable members, let them permit the member to conclude.
What I do now, Mr. Speaker, is that I'm satisfied that this step by the government today is only but an admission of the failures and the missteps that they've taken in the last 30 months, the cost of which has to now be borne by the Bahamian people, for which I cannot support.
Thank you very much, honorable member. As many? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Mr. Speaker, I only wanted to make a correction. The member is absolutely correct when he said they were introducing a sliding scale to repay the bond, and the sliding scale would have allowed the rate reduction, and the sliding scale would have allowed those under certain megawatt units being used to pay very little, and the bulk of the payment would have been given to the business community, the hotels, etc. What the member refused to say is that when the meetings were held with the various business sectors, they objected and informed them that there would be mass layoff within the country, and they pulled the trigger. They refused.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Mr. Speaker, what I know, what have you, no, well, bring that, because I'm not aware, Mr. Speaker, when the board of BPL met, for example, with its largest consumer, with its largest consumer, they understood and did not object to them. Whether they object to anybody else is not within my view. When my board met with the largest consumer, my board, yes, the board of BEC at that time, they were able to show that that large consumer was paying in the neighborhood of $58 million a year when we came into office. By that meeting, they were paying around $38 million. And they were able to demonstrate that with the base increase that was proposed, that it would have gone up to $43 million. And that would have only lasted for 9 months. And so they came around and said, fine, once we're getting reliable, cost-effective service, we will be prepared to go ahead with it. And
Thank you, Honorable Member.
that's what I know the fact.
The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Kalani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very unfortunate that the member who sat in that chair, Deputy Prime Minister, was not aware of what was happening in his own party. But I spent the last 3 days reading the records, line by line, letter by letter. Unfortunately, you are unaware, but the trigger was pulled because there would have been mass layoff. That was it. That message was relayed to you all. You may not have known. But while the member is talking about different payments, Mr. Speaker, I would not issue the payments now, but I would give to my colleague here, and he would be able to inform the member. He would be able to inform the member about all the mass payoff for energy reform committees, subcommittees, etc. You are quite aware of that. Individuals who were completely employed with government were getting an additional 60,000, 40,000, etc., serving on several committees. But I would not expand on that now. I would give the information to the member here, and he would give it to you.
The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Elizabeth.
He bought 4 minutes ago for the seat the other day. What are you talking about here? You know where I'm going. You know where I'm going. You know where I'm going. Roughing it up. Stop talking. Stop talking.
Honorable members, the member for Elizabeth has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's been almost 10 years since I started this journey in this thing called politics. Now, some would say that politicians are thought of as people who will say or do anything to get elected or to gain power. But then there's a difference between a politician and a subset of politicians who are statesmen. And statesmen are politicians who will do anything for the good of the people that they elected to serve. Mr. Speaker, I think today we are going to have a debate that shows in stark relief the difference between a politician and statesman. I am reminded of a comment made by the current chairman of the Progressive Liberal Party, Mr. Fred Mitchell, on the 15th of May, 2017, when he said that politics is not a crying game. It is a competition for power. They have it, and we want it. And so, Mr. Speaker, I find it very interesting to listen to the comments made by the other side over the last few weeks in the discussion of energy and BPL and the rate reduction bond, and the comments that they would have made in the past. And Google is a lovely thing. And so I have spent a little time on Google going back and looking at comments made. But first, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take exception to the comments made by the honorable member from Cat Island, Rickey and San Salvador when he suggested that the economy of the Bahamas was in recession in 2004.
He didn't suggest, he stated.
And that would have undergirded the decision to reduce the rates. Mr. Speaker, the facts will show, and you need only go look at the central bank report, that the Bahamas was at its most buoyant in terms of its economy during that period. As a matter of fact, GDP growth in 2000 was 5%. In 2005, it was 3.4%. In 2006, it was 2.5%. Until the economy crashed in 2008. The definition of a recession, Mr. Speaker, is 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. And so either the member from Cat Island was deliberately misleading this parliament, or he simply doesn't remember or doesn't know. Mr. Speaker, I have listened to comments made. The honorable member for Exumas and Ragged Island in a November 14th article 2019, branded the Free National Movement government as shameless and said that this was an affront to the Bahamian people. We have heard the comments of the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador, who seemingly now has a totally different view of BPL, BEC, as he did in 2015 when he led the debate on the rate reduction bond in this honorable House of Assembly. As a matter of fact, the honorable member for Cat Island, in tabling the bill, acknowledged at the time, when questioned from the floor after his address, that the consumer would ultimately be paying off BEC's debt, and that the new legislation appears to make that understandably law. It is primarily, and I continue to quote, it's primarily a refinancing of existing, highly inefficient debt and liabilities of BEC. Now, Mr. Speaker, how is it that 4 short years later, the facts are somehow different, and that the honorable member now believes that it is an onerous burden for the consumer to now pay for the misjudgments, missteps, ill-advised decisions made that led BPL or BEC to get to the state that it is in today? Let me put this in some context, Mr. Speaker. At the end of 2018, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas had $8.2 billion of national debt. Now, that does not include the unfunded pension liability, which is thought to be anywhere between 1.5 and about $2 billion. It was about $1.5 billion in 2014. And it was predicted to rise to $4.1 billion by the year 2032. That means, Mr. Speaker, if we use the $8.2 billion national debt, and we say, just for example, that we have 400,000 citizens in this country, that every man, woman, and child in this country would have a debt of $20,500. Now, Mr. Speaker, that is not something that the Bahamian people relish. But when you look at how we got there, and we look at the various state-owned enterprises and the debt that they carry, let's give some examples. The Bahamas Development Bank in 2018, $41 million of debt. BEC BPL, $246 million of debt. Water and Sewage, $76.5 million. Bridge Authority, $23 million. Bahamas Mortgage Corporation, $160 million of debt. Education Loan Authority, $62 million. The Clifton Heritage Authority, $24 million. Public Hospitals Authority, $84.7 million. Lucayan Renewal Holdings Limited, $35 million, for a grand total of $752,251,000. So the road to hell, Mr. Speaker, is paved with good intentions. And if we look at the decisions made by every single government since independence, every single year we have spent more than what we earned. And the honorable member from Kalani said it well. And I believe this was a statesman-like comment, that we are going to fix this problem. We're going to take on these big tasks. Mr. Speaker, what we have to do, first of all, and I say to my patients all the time, the first thing you have to do is you got to claim the problem. Patient come to me and say, you know, Dr. Sands, they say I got a little sugar. They say I got high blood pressure, but I ain't claiming that. I ain't claiming that. I say, well, what you mean you can claim it? If you can claim it, you can dead. What that translates into, Mr. Speaker, is that sometimes when people come in, let's say they got a little sore on their toe, and they say, well, you know, I ain't claiming that. I don't want you to deal with my diabetes or my high blood pressure. And they let it get worse. Well, at some point in time when they come in, Mr. Speaker, instead of me having to take off that toe I may have to take off the whole leg in order to save their life. And so what we are talking about today is bitter medicine, Speaker. It's bitter medicine. But it is an acknowledgement that somebody has to do the heavy lifting. And that we are not going to go stick our finger up in the wind and see what the public response to it is if it's the right thing to do. The right thing to do, Mr. Speaker, is to solve the energy problems of this country. The right thing to do, Mr. Speaker, is to be honest with the people of this country. And the right thing to do is to give them hope that once we solve this problem, we are never going back. Never going back. Mr. Speaker, we need only look at countries in the world that were failed. Let's look at Rwanda, where they had genocides in 1994. It is now one of the most vibrant economies in the world. Let's look at other places like Bosnia, also now thriving after civil war. We all know the story of Singapore, but a family or sister nation in the region, Jamaica, has now demonstrated that it is one of the fastest growing economies in the Caribbean, having made some very tough decisions and having made the decisions that it needed to make. They claimed the problems and they got it right. Now, Mr. Speaker, I want to go to add a little bit more perspective. And perspective is very important. A lot of people ask the question, why do you say what went on 5 years ago or 10 years ago? You're the government now. Fix it. We are absolutely the government now, Mr. Speaker, and we are going to fix it. But sometimes you need a little perspective to know how you got in this position in the first place. So, Mr. Speaker, let us go back to the rate reduction bond. And I spent a lot of time. This is the Power Secure BPL business plan, and I'll table this at the end. And it is a wonderful document, Mr. Speaker. I must acknowledge it's a wonderful document. But in it, it describes the plan to raise $600 million paid for by the Bahamian public. And I wanted to be very clear that it was going to be the first charge. And let me read an article from the Nassau Guardian, November 24th, 2015. $600 million financed by bonds to fund BEC restructure. And it speaks, and I will take excerpts from this. Davis, meaning the honorable member from Cat Island, gave the figures in the House of Assembly as he led the debate on three critical bills: the Electricity Amendment Bill 2015, the IRCA Amendment Bill 2015, and the Electricity Rate Reduction Bond Bill 2015, designed to bring about the reform of the electricity sector. Davis explained that the $600 million would serve several functions, including the refinancing of BEC's existing liabilities, bank debts, bonds, and other non-current financial liabilities. There's more, but I want to go down.
Honorable member, is that a newspaper article you read?
It is, Mr. Speaker.
Could you just give us the date and the name?
November 24th, 2015, the Nassau Guardian.
Thank you.
Davis cited as core principles of the rate reduction bond the fact that it is issued by a special purpose, non-profit bankruptcy remote vehicle, that it is structured so that it does not appear as a liability of BPL or BEC, but is a standalone bond securitized by, and this is very important, a first claim on all revenues received from customers. First claim. So before you get a drop of current, Mr. Speaker, you got to pay the rate reduction bond as led by the honorable member for Cat Island. So, Mr. Speaker, let's look at what the plan was. The plan was $321 million for debt refinancing, 87 million for other capex. We're gonna use, I'm sorry, that is our rate reduction bond. So $350 million for payment of existing financial liabilities of BEC, $20 million for extensive environmental remediation, $20 million for the cost of reforms of the electricity sector, and $10 million for the administration of the rate reduction bond. $600 million, not a mention of solar power, not a mention of renewable power, Mr. Speaker, not one. Nothing there. Now, move forward to 2019 when, having presented this in an impassioned way as the only solution to, as what was described as a near insolvent corporation, we now present a rate reduction bond plan, and the honorable member for Cat Island now finds that this is unacceptable. However, what we plan to do is to refinance debt, $321 million. Other CapEx upgrades, $87 million. Wärtsilä Phase 2, $70 million. Dorian storm recovery expense, $50 million. Advanced metering, $30 million. So you pay as you go, Mr. Speaker. If you want to spend $20 on a weekend and run the air conditioning, you can. But at the end of the month, you know exactly how much current you can burn. Family Island solar projects, $28 million. Family Island LNG conversion, $15 million. Land purchases for LNG input terminal on New Providence, $14 million. Transaction costs, $10 million, for a grand total of $650 million. So, Mr. Speaker, if we look at the state of energy, it is very clear that the single greatest impediment to us thriving as a country is both the challenges with availability of energy, that's generation, transmission, and distribution, and the cost of energy. We have outlined a plan to deal with the availability of energy on a consistent basis, such that in very short order we will have redundant power capacity. I'll get back to that in a second. And ultimately we realize, Mr. Speaker, that with the transition to more efficient generating equipment, improvement in transmission and distribution, as well as eliminating some of the waste that we currently have, which is estimated to be anywhere between 11 and 14%, that we will see a reduction in cost to the consumer. And that will be a sustained, long-term phenomenon. And that will cause our economy to grow. Now, Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about power. A lot of people have heard this megawatt, 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 and want to know what is a megawatt. A watt is a measure of power. People know about the 60-watt light bulb, the 75-watt light bulb, the 100-watt light bulb. 1,000 watts is a kilowatt. 1,000 kilowatts, or 1 million watts, is a megawatt. 1 megawatt of power can manage roughly 1,000 homes. That's a good rule of thumb. BPL's current peak demand on New Providence is roughly 250 megawatts. As of 2019, at Clifton, we have 35 megawatts of generating capacity. At Blue Hills, we have 140, and then we have the Agreco units providing 115 megawatts of generation. When we add the Wärtsilä plants, we expect by 2020 to have 210 megawatts of generating capacity at Clifton. 120 at Blue Hills, and about 40 of the Agrecos will keep on hand. That's 370 megawatts, which is more than enough redundancy, which will allow for growth. It also allows us to maintain the equipment, which would be newer equipment. And so, Mr. Speaker, as I get ready to conclude my very brief comments on this subject, I think it's very important for us, as we speak to the Bahamian public, to speak as statesmen, to speak about solving the problems in their lives, to deal with their lives, to make their lives better. And I am pleased to hear the honorable member for Kalani talk about taking on the big problems. The problem with the New Providence landfill, for all intents and purposes, is now stable. In short order, not forgetting the inconvenience that people have suffered with BPL, we hope to put this behind us, and then we go on to the next big problem. And so, Mr. Speaker, Elizabeth stands in firm support of the rate reduction bond bill 2019. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. As many, the chair recognizes the honorable member for North Eleuthera.
Yeah,
You're right, Exum. I can talk about Bryland. Your leader didn't want to touch on Bryland. Yeah, that's all I need anyway. Mr. Speaker, members of this honorable House, I'm indeed privileged to be here and to speak on behalf of the people of North Eleuthera. I value this opportunity to be their voice, but more so to address the issues that are most important in their day-to-day living. What we are dealing with here today is very important to me as well as the citizens of North Eleuthera, and I dare say the entire Bahamas. My good friend, the member for Elizabeth, did what I wanted to do in terms of providing commentary that was made by the member for Cat Island some short 4 years ago, when he talked about the very subject that we are debating today. And his view then that it was a beautiful thing and it meant better days for the Bahamas to come. That is why I find it strange today that now there's cause for concern. It is interestingly important to note that he did everything that was necessary. He met with the Chamber of Commerce, he met with strategic partners, they put in place every mechanism that was needed to articulate this grand scheme to bring affordable electricity to the Bahamas. All of this he did. He brought it right to the door. And then 2 years later, it's still sat there at the door. We are often told, follow the plan. We left it there for you. All you have to do is stick to the plan.
They did.
And everything will just fall in line. On this particular item, he most certainly didn't follow the plan. And obviously he had time. He had 2 years. And I noticed as he wrapped up, he indicated that this plan was going to bring reduction in bills. Our consumers would have been paying less. Elizabeth has already corrected the notion that in 2000, when he said that we were going through a recession, that is why they prompted to lower rates. That has been debunked. But What I can't understand, if you had this beautiful plan, this exceptional plan that was going to take care of the people who you say you love the best, why keep it from them? Why keep it from them? You know, we have a habit in this country, and this has to do with us as politicians. We have a habit in this country that sometimes we make decisions that are politically benefiting for us, but it's not benefiting to the people. You see what I mean by that? I mean, we would make a decision that's politically expedient for us when it's not at the benefit of the people. We don't go down that road because while it's the good, righteous thing to do for the nation, it might cost us some votes. And because of that, we just let it slide. And the nation suffers. Big people make big decisions. You should not be guided by whether or not it is politically expedient for you, but rather what is in the best interest of your country. I often get caught up in discussions concerning the gender equality bill. The F&M introduced it under Hubert Ingram. The PLP campaigned against it, and it was defeated. The PLP came back later and introduced the similar bill, and I said F&M campaigned against it. It was the wrong thing to do. We did it because it was politically expedient for us. Right. And we've got to be big enough to realize what is best for the country and not the party. I have an issue with us that when we're out, we say one thing, and when we're in, we say another.
Yes, yes.
What do we maintain in this country? What do we maintain? Check out our infrastructure. We do not do a good job. Now, I would submit we do a better job than my friends on the other side. You know, they seem to always tout they care about people, we care about things. I don't agree with that. But I think the record would reflect that that's the word I'm looking for. We multitask. And there are times when you make decisions that affect our people. And even though those things we do may create a little hardship for the present, but in the future, it makes it better. We can't be short-sighted. We can't just see what's in front of us. We've got to look at the bigger picture. I recall flying into Nassau one Sunday afternoon during the summer. And actually I was abroad, and I couldn't catch a connecting flight to go home. So I had to stay in Nassau overnight. And when I got my car, I drove down along Bay Street from Blake Road. And every portion of the beach, there were people. They were lined from the caves, Delaport, Cable Beach, Goodman's Bay, Saunders Beach, even the rocks Long Walk. I went all the way up to Montague, and everywhere. I've never seen so much people on the beach in my entire life. No, that was the day we had the blackout in Nassau. Everybody was trying to find somewhere to cool off, to relax. Why? Because we had catastrophic problems with BPL. We all know it's a problem. Do we expect it to get fixed free of charge? Even in their proposal, they knew there were going to be costs incurred. I don't think, well, I shouldn't say I don't think, I'm pretty sure the member for Cat Island would not tell us that there was not going to be an increase in costs. But why do we believe that if we're going to be spending all of this money to correct the problem, that there's not going to be a minimal cost at the outset? According to him, there are legacy bills, legacy debt that they need to, I think the word they used was fence around. Bring it all together. Amalgamate it. Take care of that. And then chart the way forward to correct the problems that we had. If that is what we're going to do, then what is the problem? We should not be here and being contentious against something because the F&M brought it or the PLP brought it. We are here for the benefit of the Bahamian people. If your bill go up, my bill go up too. So just to say bill going up? Yeah, but I tell you this much. All of those persons that lined the edge of Nassau on that Sunday, I guarantee you, if it meant paying $20 a month for that month, they would have gladly paid, so they would have been in the comfort of their own home, burning their AC, watching their football game or their basketball game. We did not get here in 2.5 short years.
That is true.
Even in their report, they said that the problems are legacy problems. So how do we think or expect that these problems are going to be fixed free of charge or immediately? It don't work like that. And you know it. And when you put forth that argument, you're being disingenuous and irresponsible. You can't look the Bahamian people in the eye and say, oh, they just did it. Oh, it's the F&M problem. It is a nation problem that the F&M has been given the responsibility to fix. And fix we will. You know, I kept asking the member for Cat Island, what about Harbor Island? What about Harbor Island? What about Harbor Island?
You can ask Carmichael now.
Well, you see, I think the member knows. Because at the commissioning of a plant that they did, and we thank them for it.
He has no knowledge.
No. He has knowledge. He was there. He commissioned it. And I was there. And that plant that he commissioned lasts 2 years.
Broke down that no.
If you were to travel to Harbor Island now, we have 2 40-foot trailers with generators in running the power supply for Harbor Island.
Engine breakdown.
You know that was them there? You cut them to say that.
The system that was installed, and I was advised by persons who worked for BPL with the wrong generators in the first place. They were high revolutionary generators, and I know mechanics. They're basically standby generators. So we pumped millions of dollars into a plant. He pumped millions of dollars in a plant because he was in charge. He came there. He commissioned it. The last 2 years.
Power Secure was in charge, too, right?
Power Secure, correct.
There are people that pay $500,000 too.
I don't know what they was paying.
It didn't have an expiry date.
But I'm not here to really knock on that. I'm here to talk about the fact that what we are attempting to do now, is get a handle on this legacy debt. Amalgamate all of this outstanding. And the minister has indicated that they're setting aside money for these family islands to correct their problem going forward. And that's what I'm here for. Because North Eleuthera is counting on, the minister say 14 million. I think.
That's gotta come to you.
No, he say 14.
14 to North.
14 to North. But I think we might need a little bit more than that. But I'm forever grateful. But the point is this. Let me just say this, and I want to be clear on this. That while we seek to pay off this legacy debt and correct these problems as we go forward, I want us to understand something. Is that going forward, we are now responsible for fixing the problem. Because after this, we can't come back and say, well, the PLP this or the PLP that. And so, I am convinced that with the necessary plans that we're going to go forward with, we must keep in mind that the Bahamian people expect us to deliver on this. Yes. And you know, like I said before, and I'll say again, as a government, some of us, it has not always delivered on its promises. But I hope and I pray that as we go forward, that given the resources that is needed, that we fix this problem, and BPL will be, the problems of BPL will be a thing of the past. And everybody will be able to look back on this and say, gone are those days. And I could speak of some issues where how this will benefit all of us personally. Yeah. My wife has a store. And BPL, I said my wife has a store. We've replaced the condenser unit for the walk-in freezer. We've replaced the AC units. We've replaced the computerized cash registers. I had to install a generator at our store, a generator at the house. So I can't wait till BPL get it right. And I do agree, Prime Minister, some of us are fortunate, plenty of us in here are fortunate. And we don't feel the real pain that the people out there feel. And I get it, you know, because I know my good friend Price will talk about that $20 to $30. And I get it, $20, $30 means a lot to some of those people out there. I think I dare to say all of us in there could afford it. I say it again. All of us in there could afford it. But the persons out there, I know it's a hard sell for some of them. I know it's not easy. But I understand the sacrifice that is being called on. And that is why, Mr. Minister, once you get this ball in your court, you better get it right.
Well, he's gone.
All that's gone.
Everyone's gone. Where's Croc?
But I say this, I do not say this in jest. I do say this in jest. This added expense, this added expense that the Bahamian people will have to undertake, I know it's a hardship for some. Because I know, like many of you, you are inundated by some of your constituents that have needs that come to you daily. Genuine needs that they require. But it would be a derelict of our duty and our responsibility that if we don't take on this vexing problem and fix it, the hardship will be temporary. You know, it's like back in the day when I was a little boy and got sick, and Mommy would give me that Buckley's, and boy, that tasted bad.
But it worked.
And I don't mean to belittle the strain and the pain that some will feel as a result of the additional cost that I'm advised should only last for 9 months. However, I do believe that it has to be done. We cannot continue down the road where we let things continue to deteriorate. If we don't fix it, it'll be like Clarence A. Bain building, where we have to tear it down. Or the post office, where we have to tear it down. Or many of the government structures that are littered all over Nassau. They have to be maintained. And to be maintained, it comes with a cost. But at the end of the day, we'll have a product that we're all proud of and a price that we can afford. And on the basis of that, North Eleuthera supports the bill.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Mango Key, South and Central Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I stand to make a very brief intervention on the electricity rate reduction bond 2019 on behalf of the great people of the Mango Key, South and Central Andros constituency. Mr. Speaker, simply put, electricity is the flow of electrical power or charge, which is a basic part of nature, one of the most widely used form of electricity of energy in our world today. Despite its importance to our daily lives, few people probably stop to think about what life would be like without electricity. Like air, water, people tend to take electricity for granted generally. But we here in the Bahamas, especially here in New Providence, have learned We've been taught a lesson, especially in the last 2 summers in New Providence, that electricity should not be taken for granted. Its consistency and sustainability should never, Mr. Speaker, in this country be taken for granted. However, people use electricity for many or most jobs or tasks, from lighting, heating, cooling homes, powering our everyday television use, computers, offices, etc. We generally use electricity in the Bahamian vernacular. As we say, we just need light. That's what we simply call it. Some would say a little bit of current. But before electricity became so widely available just over 100 years ago, candles, real oil lamps, and kerosene lanterns provided lights for us, especially in the family islands. And it was coal and the fire hearth, as a member of South Beach would call it. But if we were in Smithfield and Andros, we call it the fire hearth. Ice boxes kept cold food or simply dried fish pardon were dried on the lines on the outside. And also there were dried conch and dried grouper. And other products with a short shelf life were preserved where it would be called the big hard salt. Stores use wood burning and coal. Stoves use wood burning and coal. And even irons back in the day. I could remember my grandmother ironing my grandfather shirts with what you call the goose iron back in the day. And if a coal dropped, you could put a little hole or burn somebody's shirt or pants. Scientists and investors have worked to decipher the principles of electricity since the 1600s. Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Edison, and Nikola Tesla are all notable here for their contributions to understanding and the use of electricity. Benjamin Franklin demonstrated that lightning is, as a matter of fact, electricity in its commonest form, most common form, pardon me. Thomas Edison invented the first long-lasting incandescent light bulb, while in the late 1800s, Nikola Tesla pioneered the generation, transmission, and the use of alternating current, would be called AC current, which reduced the cost of transmitting electricity over long distances. Tesla, by extension, Mr. Speaker, his inventions brought electricity into our homes to power indoor lighting and also to indoor factories, to power them, along with the hard-working machines, especially in the more what we call the developed or first world today. As an island boy, Mr. Speaker, I speed along and skip over 4.5 centuries. In the late 1970s, early 80s, we got electricity in the community of South Andros. We were excited to have electricity in our community growing up as a young boy. And I would say that for us, it was a very special occasion. Moving along today, after having electricity and amidst all the other challenges we have faced, a family island, young men, we came to New Providence to make our lives better and also to matriculate back and forth to the family island. Now I happen to serve my hometown. And we hope for the days when we can see further development, repopulation, and our people's lives being better. Today, sadly, Mr. Speaker, as my island community of South Andros, Mangufki, and Central Andros are still challenged, we heard the bad news just before Christmas, Mr. Speaker, even before the member for Carmichael would have even put the Christmas tree lighting in the heart of downtown Nassau. That light bill is going to go up monthly between some $20 to $30 more per month. The Speaker, this is bad news just before Christmas. Taxation, once again, on the backs of the everyday Bahamian. Therefore, that mother who's challenged or struggling this evening in Baintown, Grantstown, Seabreeze, must decide whether they would put up that Christmas tree in their house, decorate around their yard, and put all those toys around their yard to give their yard a real special feel during this holiday season, because once again, light bills are going to be going up very shortly. We in the Bahamas had anticipated
hearing more. How we can expect, we heard some things from the member for Carmichael about reliable, inexpensive, consistent, sustainable, available electricity. As a matter of fact, while I sat here in this honorable place, Mr. Speaker, members of the public were texting me and said they still can't get their reimbursement from the Bahamas Electricity Corporation today because of the damages to their refrigerators, freezers, appliances, television. They still cannot get their refunds today from the Bahamas Power Company Limited. Small business persons were that directly impacted, Mr. Speaker, the mom and pop shops over the hill. I'm talking about the big boys who could weather the storm. Many of the small stores were impacted. They would have gotten supplies for the day. They go use their supplies to last no longer than 2 days. Electricity off and on. Load shedding, don't know when it's going to happen. Poor communication in the public relations of BPL over the summer. And the last summer, but this one is even worse. And here they are today, Mr. Speaker. They're now going to be encumbered by another further increase in electricity bill, lending to the misery and the challenge of our society this evening. I can just imagine the feeling of our brothers and sisters in those far-flung islands, where the member for Kalani plans to visit Perth pretty shortly. What would the member for Kalani say as Prime Minister when he visits Long Island, when he visits Mayaguana, and Inagua, South Andros, Mangrove Key? What would he say when he visits Eleuthera, Rock Sound, and Green Castle? When he tells these people in the Family Islands who are catching eternal hell that electricity is going to go up?
It would be green.
How would they be feeling when they see the Prime Minister, who they would love to welcome with open arms, who comes to tell them they are now going to be further taxed? The Speaker.
Honorable member, you keep using a word that you're using the word taxation and tax, and those words do not appear anywhere in this law. If you look at Section 3, Section 3 refers to the definitions.
Mr. Speaker, I withdraw. I wouldn't belabor the point. I understand.
It is a fee.
It's a fee, okay.
A bond.
An increase. All it is, Mr. Speaker, it's a
just a moment, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Kalani.
Mr. Speaker, since you corrected the member, I was going to wait till afterwards. I would like the member to expand from the record that statement when he said that individuals would not be able to purchase their Christmas trees this year because light bills would be increased as a result of that. That is not true, Mr. Speaker. I don't want to see the headline, but Christmas tree cannot be purchased because of increased light bills.
Honorable Member.
Speaker, that's the members. That's his view.
That ain't my view.
I have a different view. If light bills is going to go
Honorable Member.
Mr. Speaker, that's my view. When people hear this today, they're on social media. They're concerned about the light bill going up. Mr. Speaker, so people are now going to be more guarded with their couple dollars. That's my view.
But
Remember, for Kalani, that's have a different view, Mr. Speaker.
No, Honorable Member.
But I'm speaking, that's my contribution. You made yours earlier.
Honorable Member, I think the point simply being made is this. You stated it as if it was a fact. You didn't state it as if it was your opinion. And so the member's asking you either expunge it as a statement of fact or state it as an opinion.
Mr. Speaker, if you wanted to say, in my opinion, Bahamians are going to be directly impacted by the increase in light bill in the Bahamian society. $20 to $30 more per month, and no matter how you cut it and dice it, or people are going to be more careful in the procurement of funding because going forward the light bill is going to be something going up. That's my view about it, Mr. Speaker. Yeah. I noted the fact that the member for Michael, good friend, we go way back, spoke about the fact that he is repealing the Act of 2015 and almost in his effort to denounce anything that was even good or stated in that particular bill or that particular act, pardon me, virtually threw it all to naught. Mr. Speaker, I want the member for Carmichael to note that at the end of the day,
we all only here for a season, and we've got to be careful how we say and do certain things, and sometimes I know I have my moments also, but I'll leave it at that for the time being. Mr. Speaker, the member for Carmichael also, as he made his contributions, I can't help but note that we would have seen the local press in our society, they've not been particularly good to the Progressive Liberal Party in coverage, in my view. And I note the fact that I would note the fact that we note the developments at BPL and also the removal of or the resignation of the chairman and board members at BPL. And we also note interestingly today, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members.
We also note today, it's interesting that a number of members from the governing side are absent from this honorable place today. I wonder if all of them are traveling. All these members are traveling.
They don't like this.
The member for Fort Charlotte. The member for Fort Sill, the member for Central and Grand Bahama, the member for East Grand Bahama, where's Marco City, where's Bamboo Town, the member for Freetown, the member for Finance just came back.
Honorable member for Mango Key. Honorable member. Honorable member.
I got you, Mr. Speaker. I wouldn't call any more members' names. I know the fact, Mr. Speaker. I am wondering, Mr. Speaker, if members of the governing side don't like this bill. I am wondering if
honorable member
with this bill.
Just a moment. The chair recognizes the honorable member for St. Anne's.
The honorable member sat here and captivated the name of many members of Parliament who did not withdraw it. With his own eyes sitting right across, he can see Freetown.
That's what they did last week.
You know, he can see some of these other people. We know from the newspapers that East Grand Bahama is in the OECD. Sea Breeze was here. So please don't mislead and withdraw that, because you are not East Grand Bahama. East Grand Bahama is in Paris. He's in Paris.
Honorable member.
Speaker, as a senior man, I would withdraw, but I note the fact that many of these members are absent from this honorable place, and inquiring minds are asking those questions. But you know, at the end of the day, I look at this bill. Normally, with this kind of bill, Mr. Speaker, you would think that you'll have 2 days of debate. You know, and Minister of the member for East Grand should be here. It has financial implications, Mr. Speaker. But here we are, Mr. Speaker. I would want to say,
I like that point.
we note the fact that the member for Carmichael also noted the fact, I think he said over the last 19 years, some $389 million were borrowed by BEC/BPL. And I have no problem with that, because at the end of the day, he said that this was also done across the board by both sides of the political divide. What I like about the member for Carmichael, when he is ready to do things with decency and order, he's my friend. He does it and does it well. But when he's ready, he throws some little snide remarks that sometimes is unbecoming of him as also another senior member in this honorable place. And I think sometimes it causes the debate to have a little more rancour than anticipated, and gets me a little touchy sometimes, because I think sometimes I can't help but note the contribution for the member for Marathon last week. We had there was much sobriety, and there was a lot of equanimity in the bill and this presentation last week by the member for Marathon. And I must say that to hear persons speak about it in the forum that I would have been in, the forest I would have been in, it made me feel proud to see how we would have grown as a legislator. And for the member for Carmichael, I am saying to you, my brother, that people also expect to see you also as a senior man in the place comport yourself in a certain way. I'll leave it right there. Mr. Speaker.
Like that $30 no Christmas.
Mr. Speaker, I must say what saddens me also. You give the member for Kalani a little bit of leeway, a whole lot of leeway, but I must bring this point. It bothers me because he always tends to bring up the 1990s and besmirch the PLP 80s with this and that and impugn black leadership in this country. That bothers me. And Mr. Speaker, I think, Mr. Speaker, it is terrible. It is terrible. It is disgraceful that the member for Kalani would still, on a serious bill like this today, when we from this side were contemplating whether we would look at how we would look at this bill, not from a Janda's perspective, and he goes back to those days. But I'm saying also there's also something called complicity by its very nature, because the party that he's also a part of by association, Mr. Speaker, would have been one of those parties that didn't allow people of color to be even in downtown Nassau in the same country, Mr. Speaker. And so when you come and you talk about the 1980s, we got to go back. When I would have been walking with my mom, when I'm talking from my mom, from right down here at KFC, and she would remember the days when she would have been...
Honorable member.
Yeah, stay on course.
Honorable member.
Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member. You're going on a trajectory now.
Mr. Speaker.
Let me finish, honorable member. That it is not relevant. No one has made any remarks all day that suggest racism was in place.
If you're impugning black leadership,
honorable member, I'm not finished.
I have a problem with that, Mr. Speaker. Every time, Mr. Speaker, it's unfair. And the member for Kalani knows better. It is. Every time in the 1980s, the 1980s, all the time. Mr. Speaker, let's go there. Let's go back to the 1950s and 60s in this country, Mr. Speaker. Let's go back there.
Honorable member.
It's unfair.
Honorable member.
It's unfair, Mr. Speaker. It's unfair.
Honorable member, the position of the chair is there's been no issue of racism raised in here. And honorable member, there's been no issue of racism raised in this chamber today. And honorable member, ever since 1967, all our leadership have been black leaders. And so, I don't think it's an appropriate position to take that whenever some criticism is made of a period in our political history from 1967 to the present, that it is an attack on black leadership. I think that is the incorrect position to put.
In my view, Mr. Speaker, in my view, like the member, I'm totally offended. I'm offended because at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, it can't only begin from the 1980s in this country. And when the member for Kalani would have also been a benefactor, in no small way would have happened in our country post-majority rule. At the end, they're always coming from the 1980s forward. Mr. Speaker, if you go there, I got to go back too, Mr. Speaker. That's all I'm saying. And I'm offended by the commentary by the member for Kalani. As a black man in this country, Mr. Speaker, and you're going to only go up to the 1980s? Mr. Speaker, at the end, that's my view. And this is my view, Mr. Speaker. And I'm saying if we're going to go to the 1980s, let's go back to the 1940s and 50s. Let's go forward. That's all I'm saying. So let's go there.
You should know all about that.
Well, Mr. Speaker,
you should know all about
I would also know the days if you're talking along those lines when
you should know about that. You would have had there making a bunch of comments.
Rinko Francis would have been downtown. You know those stories, North Africa. You know, Rinko, you know them stories. So we leave it there. And also, you're talking about more recent times. We could talk about the Fred Ramsey debacle in more recent times too. I mean, let's go there. But you're always coming with only one side having their share of faults, Mr. Speaker. I don't like to go there, but I'm saying at the end of the day, we all control. We can all throw balls across this floor.
Man, you're bigger than that, man.
Mr. Speaker, here we are today. Here we are today, where the people in Baintown, Centerville, Angliston, Ozentown, Collinsville and Kemp Road are sitting this evening to watch the evening news with much trepidation to see whether ZNS or other news outlets would confirm whether there's going to be an increase in electricity rates just before the Christmas holiday.
There's all, the member for North Eleuthera noted the fact that there's it's a common reference point in our society where always persons normally see when they move along the streets, that the PLP cares about people, but the governing side cares about the bottom lines and how the books would look. I don't want this to be a regular saying in the Bahamian society, but to some degree, we got to be careful these things could become concretized and cemented in people's minds. I am saying to that everyday person or that cousin who's working, who took in someone else who came from the farmlands who were affected by the hurricane, the post-hurricane drama, you're now faced where you are going to be having a little tougher Christmas in my perspective. You know the fact that VAT would have gone up by some 60%. Once again, who was blamed? The PLP was blamed for VAT increase also by the present administration to some 60%. Light bill is now going up. The PLP is once again being blamed. It was the member for Kalani who said, taxation is the lazy way out. And at the end of, no, that's what he said. I'm saying he said taxation is the lazy way out.
Oh, come on.
Light bill increases, I don't care what you want for it. People got to spend more money, okay? All I'm saying at the end of the day,
It ain't option.
I would say to the member for Kalani, that the speaker stopped me and don't go any further down that line. He knows better. His spin doctors are in the house, and they will say certain things. But I know at the end of the day, he knows that he don't believe certain things that they put in his script. In my view, that's my view. He has a different feeling about it because he says he's the man of the people, and he understands how the people feel. So this evening, Mr. Speaker, social services is a challenge. Jobs are hard to find. Churches in our communities have been trying their best. So have been lodges. At the end of the day, persons this evening are grappling where they're going to get the next meal from this evening. At the end of the day, also, there's another question. I got quite a bit of text and WhatsApp on this one. Would have been interesting to ask the member for Carmichael, since the F&M came to power, how many persons would have left BPL or been given voluntary separation packages, and how many persons would have been hired, what they call VSEP, how many persons have been hired by BPL, and generally the salaries. You heard from the member for Cat Island, our leader just moments ago, that some 7 executives have been hired in more recent months on the last year, and their salaries averaging over $100,000 per person. It's interesting. But also, Mr. Speaker, as you talk about where monies could be going and where monies could be had and where monies could be garnered from, we continue to wonder about the $4 million now for travel costs, and we hear about $110,000 per day post-Hurricane Dorian and travel and subsistence. Who could be getting these monies also? Because, Mr. Speaker, why I'm saying that is this. The aspersions are always thrown at the opposition. Oh, they do this. Oh, they do that. They do that. But at the end of the day, we saw all the crying face on TV, Mr. Speaker. An impression was given that all these things were for free, and people were glad to be helping the Bahamas. Lo and behold, the bill come now. The bill come now. Something, but that is no other, Mr. Speaker, because we got the impression when the hurricane was going on and I wanted the Prime Minister and the Minister and everyone who could make a trip to go. But at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, the Bahamian people are asking what's happening now. Where is this bill coming from when we got the impression that these things were being given to the country freely?
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Elizabeth on a point of order.
The honourable member from Southern Central Andrews is deliberately misleading this House and the people of the Bahamas. The budget is for what has happened subsequent. The people of the Bahamas now have to move back into Abaco. When they go in, they're going into hardship. They need to eat. They need to be lodged. They need to have transportation. We have to pay for it. He knows that, Mr. Speaker, and he is being deliberately provocative. And I would like him to clarify or withdraw.
Mr. Speaker, all I said, inquiring minds would like to know. Remember for North Abaco is my friend. We haven't had coffee or tea for a little while. He knows what I'm talking about. I saw all of the crying on TV, Mr. Speaker, and I simply said, we got the impression, Freetown, that these flights were free. We were thanking our neighbors to the north all day and all night. We watched Channel 10, Channel 7, NBC. We watched it. Now the Bahamian people see a bill come. That's all I'm asking. If the member for Seabreeze, who I was not supposed to, I never attacked the honorable member, I leave that right there. But Elizabeth, not Seabreeze, Seabreeze is my, Seabreeze, that's my real friend, I would leave out of that. The member for Elizabeth, you know, and don't get no heart attack on this, like my heart is still pumping. All I'm saying at the end of the day, all I'm asking is where these bills are coming from. If you want to explain at the end of the day, please do that. But inquiring minds would want to know. That's all I'm saying at the end of the day. That's what I'm saying. Something just looks a little, you know, untoward. Mr. Speaker, as a formerly island member of Parliament, the most difficult thing that any member of Parliament, and I guess in your province it isn't so challenging, is when you go to visit your constituents, and as soon as you enter the door, the environment is dark. Remember, for North Eleuthera never experienced this because there's lots of money on Bralin and the Bluff and Bogue, where Bishop Moses those are from. But if you were from South Andros and my constituency in Bowen Sound, and you pull up to someone's house, you would hail them. And you get there and it's dark and they have a disabled or challenged child, an unwed or single mother. And they tell you to come inside and there's no light. There's nothing that moves anyone, any member who has a heart or a sense of compassion more than seeing your people sitting in total darkness. That's why we gotta fix it. And there's nothing you can do to assist or to remediate the situation. Light or electricity and its consistency and efficiency is a key ingredient to keeping and developing a better Bahamas. But also the cost involved must not be prohibitive to the everyday survival of our everyday Bahamians. Many of our people this evening in the community of South Central and Mangrove Key Andrews are grappling with basic light bills. For instance, were telling me stories where light bills were just over $100, where their supplies being turned off or disconnected. Mr. Speaker, these are very challenging moments. This is the time when we should be getting together and singing, "Joy to the world, the Lord has come. Let earth receive her King." At the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, there are those who might be singing on a less lower and less joyfication note, "O Tannenbaum, O Tannenbaum." The Minister administration has landed a bomb on me, O Tannenbaum. Mr. Speaker,
that has new meaning now.
Mr. Speaker, I must say, at the end of the day, we had anticipated that we would see a consistency in the reduction of light bills, a brighter Christmas with much greater hope. The Abacos with its 5 generators and only one working out, a hurricane has come. I guess anyone worshiping the Abacos. The Bimini fire, Rugged Island that is saying to be forgotten as we didn't remember. But you know, I didn't pay much attention, left it to the member for Cat Island, the whole Wasilla deal and what have you. But I happened to have been at Arawa Key, Mr. Speaker. I always like to use anecdotal references. I was blocked in because these big generators were being moved back and forth over 3 to 4 extra hours at Arawa Key at the fish fry. And this is happening, big evening as a matter of fact, that's surprising, Momber. It was big evening, like around now, a little earlier. They were moving the generators on a Sunday afternoon. Never forget it. But at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, with $100 million that was paid, or $95 million we heard earlier, we are not anticipating having any further increase in light bill. This evening, we are confident in our God that He would continue to make a way and to take us through these very trying and treacherous periods in our society.
No.
The Christmas burden is upon us. We do not want lights to be turned off, Mr. Speaker.
Oh boy.
We are praying for our people. We are praying, Mr. Speaker, for our people. We are praying for our society this evening, Mr. Speaker. We are praying this evening that our people will continue to see light at the end of the tunnel.
we are hoping, Lord, through our Lord, that there will be brighter and continuous glorious days in our Commonwealth. And we can now see that our society be one where our spirits would be lifted and the bomb and the cost of higher electricity bill would be removed. So for my people from Love Hill to Mars Bay, we hope for you also a Christmas as we'll be coming this weekend into Central Andros, next into South Andros, then on to Mangrove Key, that we'll see a gleeful Christmas amidst the gloom and doom and these news that are not so comforting to the Bahamian hearts this afternoon about increase in light bills. But I want you this evening to put your minds in gear and keep your heads held high, because there's an old song that comes to mind amidst all the challenges that we may face this evening. And as you sit this evening with your radio blazing, maybe in the Bluff, or maybe in Bowen Sound, or maybe down in Love Hill on top of the hill with the Reverend Hensley and those, there's a song that comes to mind, Marathon, that I would just reference very briefly to my people in South, Central, and Mangrove Key. I speak for them this afternoon. And it goes something like this. It's in the church hymnal, that green one. It says, I cannot for day, nor but tomorrow may bring, be a shadow or sunshine or rain. But the Lord I know who ruleth o'er everything, and all of your worries is in vain. I'm saying to my people this evening, amidst the challenges, I want you to continue to lift your heads high and continue to live by faith. Faith and works would make ends meet and be together, but have collectively a good, special, and a grandiose Christmas amidst the challenges of a new light bill being exacted upon the Bahamian backs in our 21st century society. Mr. Speaker, it's against this backdrop that I note the fact that it's not possible for me at this time to stand and support this bill, because it would bring much hardship on the people in my constituency. And we cannot at this time, in no form or fashion, support any form of further bills and hindrances and hardship on the people of South Central and Mangrove Key Andros. Mr. Speaker, I therefore want to thank you for your attention, and I'm much obliged that you would have given me the leeway to express myself during this bill at this most inopportune time for such an increase in light bill. And once again, may God continue to bless the community of South Central and Mangrove Key Andros, and by extension, may God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Well done, well done.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Pine Ridge.
Everybody should understand.
Not again, eh? Hey, let him get the order first.
I will lift up my eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord. Let me first take this opportunity before I begin my dissertation to say to not Eleuthera, I'm always impressed by your ability to articulate and especially express your views so that the common man is able to comprehend what you're saying. I commend you, and I think you've been doing a fine job. And today I would like to say, thou almost persuadest me. Almost.
I gotta work hard at that.
Mr. Speaker, but you're doing well. Mr. Speaker, it is with pleasure and privilege that I'm able to stand in this hollow place on behalf of the good and gracious people of Pine Ridge, and by extension, Grand Bahama, who I wish to encourage to remain strong as they continue to recuperate, recover, and restore themselves through their resiliency as a result of Hurricane Duane. Mr. Speaker, to this very day, persons are still unaccounted for. Many are homeless, jobless, hopeless, painless. Just a whole lot of less and more of less. People are displaced and in shelters from Grand Bahama and Abaco. Our children haven't settled in schools as they should. Many attend without uniform because they have lost them. As a result, many more children in these areas have joined the social service, breakfast, and lunch program. Our social service department was inundated with cries for help prior to the storm. The storm has exacerbated the echoes of the citizens. Nationally, there's still a sense of uncertainty, and governmentally, there is still a call for clarity of direction. For many, the hurricane was a nightmare. Many are wondering if we'll ever wake up from this drain, only to find out that what we thought was a drain is an actual reality. Mr. Speaker, prior to the storm, the economy of the Bahamas was not fiscally strong. We were optimistic at best. The government has not done anything robustly to grow the economy since coming into office, in my view. This is why I voted against 60% raise of VAT so early in the game when coming to office. I felt then, as I do now, that the government should have first sought to improve the economy and the pockets of the people rather than taxation of an already burdened people. Might I pause to say this? Prior to the storm, Grand Bahama and Abaco, I believe, contribute some 30% or perhaps even more to our GDP income. However, many people of these islands feel as if, since the storm, we're treated as a nonchalant way, whether intentional or not. There's a perception by these two islands that we are no longer as important due to the lack of our financial potency at this time. Mr. Speaker, Grand Bahama and Abaco relates to the song more now than ever. That song, believe, is being sang by our government silently and collectively. The song that says, "Don't love you no more since your money gone. Did it for you, Jack. I'm moving on." The IDB, International Development Bank, you can hear some more things, Lord Abaco, besides not guilty, has stated that Hurricane Duane alone has impacted the economy in terms of devastation, economic, governmental, private sector, and personal loss at $3.4 billion. Prior to the storm, economically, from a national perspective, we were just financially limping along, hoping for something big to happen. Opposition, give them a chance here. Hoping for something organic or Bahama-ish to happen on our watch. Perhaps there's nothing wrong with that. Nonetheless, people must have a sense that you're looking out for their interests as a government. Mr. Speaker, from the time I've arrived in this place until now, I've wanted to find something substantial that I could boast about with the government that I ran with. I'm not trying to be combative or constantly critical, but it's been very difficult for a person like myself to conscientiously support many of the things and bills that have been brought to this place. Many of the legislative bills seem to favor foreign entities and special interests. The noble thing of it will be done when I want to do it, not when you tell me to do it. I'm here for Pine Ridge, not you. While simultaneously presenting bills that appear to be burdening the present and future generations to come. Mr. Speaker, I too, like the Bahamian people, am asking the obvious question that no one seems to be receiving or perceiving an answer. Who's advising the government? Who are we speaking to? Who's leading us down this path of political disaster? The timing of this bill, in my opinion, is off. It shows lack of concern and compassion for the backs of the poor and middle-class Bahamians of this country. The national economy is off. People's pockets are off. Unemployment has been elevated since Duane, bearing in mind it was high prior to Duane. People have lost homes, vehicles, don't know how their children are going to eat. Some of us don't have electricity, and the company you want to burden us with could hardly keep the electricity on. But you wish for us, the people, to pay bills left by other people, governmental, which you confess today, and corporate Bahamas. The government themselves failed to pay BPL. The government's words, not Pine Ridge. So, Mr. Speaker, we're here today shaping a policy by the government to move BPL forward, which we need, but not like this. A policy that speaks to fees and bonds that is ultimately, in my opinion, a tax burden on the backs of the Bahamian people. We said there will be no new taxes. I told you before, it's not what you say, it's what you do. Mr. Speaker, I don't mind what pretty words
Honorable member,
we put on it. Yes, Mr.
I had
Speaker.
given advice earlier.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Because you may be of the opinion that this matter is a matter of taxation, does not permit you to deem it that. This
I'm not deeming it. I'm stating it's my opinion, my interpretation.
No, you cannot have an opinion on a matter.
Mr. Speaker, how can you say I cannot? This is my speech,
Member,
Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, resume your seat. Let me finish what I'm saying. This act that this bill that we have before us is very clear in its interpretation in Section 3 on what a bond is. It is very clear on what a bond is.
Mr. Speaker, I hear you and I accept you, but I will, in my dissertation, give my interpretation and tell you why I believe, which I'm entitled to do, as to why I believe it is a tax. And I will say so as I go along in my speech, and have a right to at least give my opinion or my interpretation, because we could all see one accident and everybody else have a different interpretation. And I'm entitled to that, Mr. Speaker, even if I speak in Calabushe.
Honorable member,
I have a right to do that.
resume your seat. You do not have a right in dealing with the law to give your opinion on what the law is specifically saying.
Mr. Speaker, in all due respect, this is not a
honorable member.
This is not a legal class.
Resume your seat. Are you debating this act that is before this Parliament?
I am debating this act, and I've heard people who have gone outside of this act, and you had nothing to say, Mr. Speaker. I have a right to speak to this issue.
Resume your seat.
I don't need a lecture in legality. I'm not here trying to be a lawyer. I'm speaking on behalf of the people. If Mr.
Honorable member, resume your seat. The next time you disrupt this Parliament, I will ask you to withdraw. Now, this particular bill that we have before us is very clear in its interpretation. In Section 3, it says a reduction bond, that is what we're dealing with, means a non-recourse financial instrument or evidence of indebtedness referred to in Section 10 issued in accordance with this Act. That is what the meaning of a reduction bond is.
Your colleagues sit here and say nothing.
So that is what the meaning of this reduction bond is.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It is not a tax. It is not taxation.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you again, but I will state.
I am not participating in debate.
No, that's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. You know, Mr. Speaker, may I continue?
Continue.
Mr. Speaker, I will state why I feel the way I feel, and then you have given me your reason.
I am not giving you my reason.
But Mr. Speaker,
I am giving you the interpretation.
Speaker,
I am giving you the interpretation of the bill that is before the Parliament.
I'm going to be able to. Wrong. Mr. Speaker, I don't mind what pretty words we put on it, what legalized terminology or legislative jargon we promote today. This is nothing more, in my opinion, and I will tell you, matter of fact, I'll tell you now, in my opinion, it's nothing more than a tax on the Bahamian people. If you need me to break it down to you, now that you've given me, Mr. Speaker, your interpretation, here's mine.
I haven't given you my honorable member.
Speaker, you told
Honorable member, resume your seat.
me what was in.
I am not giving you my interpretation. I am giving you the interpretation of the bill that is before us.
I be quiet in here. That's why.
That is all I am doing, giving you.
Okay, Mr. Speaker.
That is why you have that section.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, when I pay for my driver's license, marriage license, or business license, it is a taxation or fee, whatever you want to call it, it is a tax from the government. The electric rate reduction bill is in the same category. This legislation isn't giving me a choice. It is demanding that its citizens pay that fee. For how long? It is what it is. And if you're passing legislation for me to pay, I consider it a tax, nothing more or nothing less. Selah. Moving forward, with a rate reduction bill, you are amending the law. You are requiring the consumers of BPL to pay BPL bill, and you're making law today by way of this legislation. Mr. Speaker, I would be remiss if I did not mention, however, that there was in 2015 the Electricity Rate Reduction Bond Act, which the government is repealing today. What I'm struggling with, even with the past act in place, BPL was still in the monetary doldrums. It's been a struggling SOE or state-owned enterprise. Successive governments have all acquiesced to the present state of affairs of BPL, formerly BEC, because they have constantly used it as a political football, like may I add, as I feel, like ZNS. The Bahamian public is already strapped. It's as if you're asking the people like Pharaoh to make bricks out of straws. However, this government believes the average Bahamian is not messianic and cannot turn water into wine. Mr. Speaker, in my view, this bill isn't good for us as Bahamians individually or collectively. From the people's perspective, from the people's time government. The Bahamian citizenry has been complaining about BPL, its inability to electrify, particularly this island. Just keep the lights on. Yes. Not to mention that BPL promised no load shedding this summer. From the time they said it, the lights have been cutting on and off. And to add insult to injury, people's lights have been turned off for less than $200 in the past. Others have owed thousands, and lights were left on. And by the way, they could have afforded to have paid. Many consumers, because of the load shedding, have lost appliances, to which many consumers have not yet been compensated for. So, let me see if I get this right. We're borrowing more money to put into BPL, who've not proven itself to be consumer friendly or given value for service.
We need a report. We need it.
Not to mention, and I might have been asleep, I've not seen the bill in here yet, or talked about, but I'm told it was talked about. This Gazilla 100 million for Wasilla, 95 million, which is separate and apart from what, 650 million? I yield to be corrected.
The chair recognized the Honorable Member for Carmichael.
Yeah, I thank the honourable member for yielding. The current Wadzilla plant is 132 megawatts. That comes on next month. There's another Wadzilla plant with Wadzilla engines that will have 90 megawatts. We anticipate that being completed in 2021. And we are anticipating that we'll need $70 million to do that. So the member could be fully informed of what we're seeking to do. I indicated this morning the state of the engines that we have and what has to be done.
So while you're there, so we're talking about 95 million or almost 100 million.
70 million.
Plus 7, okay. Plus 7, okay. So, and I'm not laying the blame at this government's feet. But let me just see if I get the pitch here. So it's almost 650 being placed on the backs of taxpayers. Almost $750 million for one SOE. Almost $750 million for this SOE alone. 650 plus, yeah, it's about that. Yeah, plus the legacy, yeah. In the 650. All right. So the 650 plus is the 95.
Yeah. Honorable member, let me assist. We're looking to get a maximum of 650 million, depending on what is needed for Abaco, but we may not need 650 million. But I outlined this morning what about 607 of that would pay for. And that included generation, that included some family island renewables, that included a number of other items.
So Carmichael, just to be clear,
yes,
for the Bahamian people,
yeah,
is the first 95 million separate and apart from the 650?
Yeah, totally. Doesn't have anything to do with the other.
Okay, so then if I was to say 6 million plus 100, you're talking about almost 750 million, which puts me at about $750 million for one state-owned enterprise. And I'm no way trying to lay this at the feet of this government. Our government. But here's the point. Here's the point. We do these things that, and maybe this is just to help you to understand and to get a clearer picture. We hear the commercial about the floppy disk. We understand that. Let me tell you what's bothering the Bahamian people. We know the floppy disk is antiquated and anti-dated. But we say, gracious, we've been here now 2.5+ years. We don't want to hear how the floppy disk got there or how long it's been there. 2.5 years is enough time for you to fix the floppy disk. And get the right thing. No. Listen to the point that I'm making. Within the 2.5 years that we've been in governance, it should have, not what we're fixing, going to fix. And see, when I try to, no. When I try to,
You get in government, you'll understand.
Mr. Speaker, let me go, because y'all ain't trying to hear. That's a part of the problem now. The Bahamian people are also still waiting. The Bahamian people are still waiting for an explanation as to why the previous board, which appeared not to be rubber-stamped, was unceremoniously disbanded by this transparent and accountable government. No, I ain't going.
Fine with Mayor is this? I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to be of assistance, and I don't want to interrupt your point. We're speaking about a legacy debt. Remember, I spoke about $321 million. That's a legacy debt that BPL has. And that 95 million would fall within that legacy debt. These are debts that have been built up over a period of time that BPL has. So that would fall within the legacy debt. Yeah.
So, yes. Yeah. And I think we've accepted that. I've accepted that. The question still remains is there another way? Is there another way?
Let's hear it.
Hitherto, well, I'm coming there. Hitherto, the government and BPL, if we require more money by way of taxation, whatever we wish to call it, then BPL should be required to give more transparent and accountable details as to how money is to be spent and how it will avoid similar financial fallouts in the future. Now, we talked about what might be the suggestion. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Perhaps as opposed to taxing the people or putting a fee on the people, maybe this was the time for us to give consideration to a strong, international, professional, people who actually know how to run a plant.
Foreigners? You want to bring in foreigners now?
Hold on. I'm not talking about power secure. I'm talking about perhaps giving a percentage of the shares.
Foreigners?
Having shares. I'm talking about bringing on a partner. If at times, no. You asking me. Listen, if at times you reach a point where you can no longer, perhaps
you hear about bringing in foreigners?
I didn't say. Again, now is the time to consider partnership. Mr. Speaker, that's what the public wants to hear. How do we avoid BPL getting deeper into debt? We hear what Wasilla is going to do. But shouldn't the government have at least waited to allow the company to prove themselves capable of service, transformation, and economic productivity? How do we come through a storm that has created $3.4 billion in damage in an already limping economy, where VAT has been increased by 60%? Unemployment has quadrupled in our second and third economic pillars of the economy. And might I add, we keep bringing these taxes and these fees, but nobody's speaking to people's salary. Salaries are remaining the same. Everything is going up. Many of our civil servants hardly take home a paycheck at the end of the month, because their money has already been eaten up by previous commitments, banks, and consumer loans. Yes, we make these decisions.
No,
They make those decisions, and we have to educate them about those decisions. But simultaneously, we know they've made those decisions, so we must not be seen as taking advantage and by adding a burden to an already overburdened consumer. Don't please. I'm not trying, and I'm going to say this because y'all don't get. See, sometimes I keep saying, no, I don't know. I'm not really want to get it. No, there are others in here who get it. They may not say, they may keep their mouth closed, but they know just what time of day it is. While others are trying to impress others, some just keeping their mouth closed.
How do you fix it without funding?
I gave you one suggestion.
What was that? Bring in foreigners?
See, no. I didn't say foreigners. You said foreigners. I said that it's time that we find persons. They could even be Bahamian, or it can be international, but not limited to. But not limited to. Because there's some Bahamians who would like to be given an opportunity, but for some strange reason, sometimes they just don't feel it.
And then as soon as a break time,
Parents have taken their children out of private school, and many are contemplating have removed them from tertiary level. You know, I'm not trying to be the prophet of doom and gloom, but I will say this. Perhaps if we treat our people better, you might have done better. I told you before, it's like we've become a quicksand government. You know what I've learned about quicksand? It's an example right here today. The more you wiggle, the more you go down. The more this government makes announcements and pronouncements, the worse things seem to get. Go back. Hear me today. Hear me, please, with all your laughing and all your joking and Justin while people are hurting. Hear me today.
Hear yourself.
I can hear myself.
Get out the quicksand.
I'm not in quicksand.
Get out.
Oh yeah, you deep in that.
Oh. Not Andros? Who don't know the difference between David and Daniel in the Bible? Stop. Stop. Stop while you're ahead. Don't mess with me. Don't mess with me. Okay? And if you're calling me, not Andros are calling me a devil, I thank you.
Honorable member.
Call my master that. Go back. We need to go back. Look at what. Stop trying to press your people in here. I'm not afraid. None of you got a heaven to put me in or a hell to keep me out of. Not a one of you. We need to go back and reassess. Look at what we did wrong and what we didn't do right. And perhaps, just maybe, the Bahamian people might take another look at it. Pine Ridge has difficulty in this bill because I see it as nothing more than another tax on the backs of the people. With a company that is yet to prove themselves with the Bahamian people. BPL, give the people value for service, then perhaps Pine Ridge and the Bahamian people will support you. Can you just keep the lights on? Keep the lights on.
They need money to do that.
Then come back and let's talk. Those engines were the result of successive government lack of maintenance.
Agreed.
Okay? And you are doing it. You already brought Wazilla. You got Wazilla.
That's only a 4 ship.
Yeah, well then let's prove to the Bahamian people that you know how to work Wazilla. Prove to us that you can keep it on. Prove to us that it works. And then maybe.
There's a series of batteries.
People in this country are tired of the talk and the blame game. And nobody tells me what to say. He who laughs last, laugh best. Pine Ridge rest.
Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. As many, Chair recognizes the honorable member for Central and South Eleuthera.
Neighbor, before 7 o'clock, move the...
Why you asked about the international expenditure?
Oh, sorry, that clock wrong. Sorry, that clock wrong. Sorry.
But I didn't put it on.
Well, they reset it.
No, I've gone by that.
Yeah, look at it.
Sorry.
Fighting and listening to you, and I agree with you.
All right. I apologize. But you did say it.
$1 billion.
As many. The chair recognizes the member for Central and South Eleuthera.
Then you become a ruler of men. I rise today on behalf of the great people of Central and South Eleuthera. Today, Mr. Speaker, laid before this honorable house is a very, very important piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker.
I done?
Mr. Speaker, the rate reduction bond bill.
We need to hear this. No, I just say I done, Bahamas.
Members, that's...
Maybe at some times it can become a bittersweet situation, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, I've heard for the last few years, as a matter of fact, for all my life, growing up as a young Bahamian, coming and going back and forth to New Providence and living in the Family Islands. Mr. Speaker, New Providence were faced with a problem with electricity for many, many, many years. Mr. Speaker, we had successive governments that did not have the courage and the strength to grab the bull by the horn and set the record straight. Today, Mr. Speaker, this Free National Movement government has decided to take the bull by the horn and set it right. Mr. Speaker, whether we like it or not, in just a few short weeks, New Providence will have, for the first time in many, many years, a new power plant. Mr. Speaker, that calls for individuals with planning, persons who persevere, and persons who are capable of making great decisions on behalf of the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, this F&M government decided that New Providence in particular will get what is due. Mr. Speaker, being an electrician, I do understand what it is about with electricity. That is my first profession. And how important it is, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a lot of Bahamians does not understand, especially here in New Providence in particular, and even the Family Islands, that every time there is something new added to this country or this island, BPL have to provide more and more energy. Mr. Speaker, Atlantis came to the Bahamas a few years ago, here in New Providence. And then Bahama came a little later. And then we have another hotel out west, Albany, Mr. Speaker. And tonight, or today, they are getting ready to energize a new hotel right down here, Mr. Speaker. It all calls for strategic planning, Mr. Speaker. And people need to understand the reason for it. And Mr. Speaker, if the good member from Carmichael and his team didn't get together to make this happen, where would we be? We have had power failures throughout New Providence. We complain every day. Everywhere we turn, people are complaining, the power's off, the power's off. But this F&M government is correcting that, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy. And Mr. Deputy, I want some of the members to understand this does not come free. You pay for that. There's nothing free in this world any longer. But the Bahamian people have to make up their mind. Are we going to make our country better, or are we going to let it fail? And the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, we must pay our bills. No, sometimes we might disagree with this bond. But in order to make things better for us, we have to pay the price. Mr. Speaker, I support this because I do understand the reason for it and the purpose of it. And I would not get in this house today and just to point fingers because I can. This is an important bill to the Bahamian people. And some of us need to stop and think before we speak sometime, but speak truth to the Bahamian people. Not because we sit on the opposite side, you have to come in here and mislead the people. What is important is to tell the Bahamian people the truth. They must look at these bills and make sure that these bills are correct. Mr. Speaker, in the island of Eleuthera, like the member from the north said, He has had his challenges in Hubble Island for years and years. And so do we in Central and South. Mr. Speaker, Eleuthera is at the point where hopefully in the next few months we will begin to boom. Developments are beginning to be lined up. BPL have to be prepared for this development, Mr. Speaker.
Speak.
And in order for this to happen, this government have to find the money to make sure that the equipment is there and is adequate to take the load, Mr. Speaker. There's nothing free, Mr. Speaker.
That's right.
We need to stop misleading the people, Mr. Speaker. Because we sit on the opposite side, we come in and we mislead the people. Mr. Speaker, I don't believe in that. I believe in honesty. I believe in being upfront and straightforward. If it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, Mr. Speaker, it is wrong. Mr. Speaker, in the island of Eleuthera, I'm going to speak on Eleuthera, Mr. Speaker. I want the government to take note that inside Eleuthera, BPL in particular, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to go off course a little bit, and I have to say this. I'm going to pull this up, Mr. Speaker. Give me 1 second. And those two young men I'm going to speak about, Mr. Speaker, in Roxanne, Mr. Kirk McCartney and their son, Kerry. Young men, Mr. Speaker, from 2014 went to work for BPL. And every time the government changed, they sent them home. And the next day, hired 2 PLPs, brought them on the job. Where is the future for our young people? Why do we play with the lives of our young people? We have a lot of young Bahamians who work for these power companies, Mr. Speaker, who are not being treated fairly. I have seen over the years individuals work for the power company who deserve to be paid, but we bring in the foreigners to diagnose our problem. At the end of the day, the Bahamians are left to fix the problems. I've seen this happen in the island of Eleuthera, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to speak about the people in Eleuthera because I have to speak about this. In the Family Islands in particular, and all of the Family Islands, Mr. Speaker, those young men who risk their lives out there every day, they are, number one, they're doing common labor, cutting trees, they're linesmen, they're mechanics, and gets paid one salary, Mr. Speaker. But in places like New Providence, they have a job description. In the Family Islands, they don't have that. And these fellows are out there and they have to be trained all around. I think it's unfair. And I think it's unfair when people in the Family Islands are not being promoted in the position they should be promoted, Mr. Speaker. There are people in my constituency in Eleuthera tonight who deserve to be promoted in BPL and do not, and have not had the opportunity to be promoted. We find ourselves recently when they made some changes. BPL is not performing the way it should. There's a poll came on in my constituency recently. Took BPL 19 hours to replace one pole, Mr. Speaker. Unacceptable. 19 hours. Why? Because they got rid of all the persons with the experience who were able to go in there and fix it. And they got a bunch of trainees that they're using now. We need to fix that. Yes. We need to fix that. And if Eleuthera is going to go, Mr. Deputy, which we expect that to happen in a few short months, BPL must be at its best. Today, every other night when high winds, power lines are down. Poles are still leaning from Hurricane Andrew from 1992. We still have poles in that constituency leaning, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I want to thank the member from from Carmichael, for the restoration recently in all the street lights that they were able to go and fix recently. Mr. Deputy, it was disgraceful for the amount of street lights that was out in that constituency for the last 4 years.
Speak.
But I want to thank them that they went through and they have made some adjustments and the people are happy about it. Mr. Deputy, I stand here today and I support this bill. Even though it may be a bittersweet, but in order to play, you got to pay. There is nothing free. And the Bahamian people must understand, you want better energy, you want clean energy, it's not free. We have to pay.
That's right.
Let's stop misleading our people. We will take funds, we as Bahamians will take funds, and we would support other places overseas. Send the money in and out of this country daily for other organizations or wherever. But when it comes to home, we got a problem. We have a problem in supporting our own. And in order for BPL to survive, we have to pay for it. So let's stop misleading the Bahamian people. I say to you, you on the opposite side in particular, who choose not to support this bill, but you had a similar bill, but you choose not to support this bill.
Right.
And all this free national movement government is doing is making it right. That the future generations of the Bahamas can look back and say, we don't have a 60, 70, 80-year-old power plant any longer. We have a state-of-the-art under the leadership of Hubert Alexander Menace and the Free National Movement. We had the energy and individuals who have the courage to do just that, to spend millions on top of millions. And that is how we are going to correct the problems in this country. We must take the challenges on, we must take the bull by the horn. Mr. Speaker, I've already said that, but I just want to throw out a couple of things quickly to my government. The members, the residents of Hatchet Bay, Eleuthera, are still awaiting to be able to own a piece of the land around them, which have that community landlocked. Like you've done in many areas in the Bahamas, you passed the bill, and we made sure they had a house lot that they could afford. People in Hatchet Bay are crying. We're still looking forward to that. Governors, however, have some land expecting the same thing, Mr. Deputy. Northwich was singing the same thing, right, my brother?
Yes, it is.
We're only asking that the people in the constituency be treated fairly. Let's pass the legislation. Let's make sure those people are cared for. After almost 25 years, successive governments always said to the residents of Hatch Bay in particular, we're going to make it possible that you'll be able to get a piece of the land there. Residents of Hatch Bay are leaving home to go to Gregory Town, the Eleuthera Island Shores, Rainbow Bay. That's not right. And then we could fix that. The land that belongs to the AIC. The people are asking for a residential lot. But I can say this today. And recently, we decided to support the bill to make sure that the Sweetie Pond is protected. But I want to know, how could we decide to give Sweetie, to give the National Trust this park, and the rest of the Hatch Bay don't have a house lot? We can't go in there and do that. Those people are waiting patiently. Mr. Deputy, the residents in Tarpon Bay are crying for their docks to be repaired, Mr. Deputy. South and Central don't ask for very much. But we've been waiting, and we need some attention. I want to thank the member from Carmichael again for the repairs to the road recently, Central and South. It's overdue. You see, what we do here, some of us will never come back and say thank you, you know. Never come back and say thank you. All it takes is to recognize and say thank you. And I am grateful to him and the Ministry of Works for what they have done. But there's a lot more that needs to be done. Mr. Deputy, I will stop at this point. Members of this Honorable House, this bill may be a bittersweet, but we're heading in the right direction. South and Central supports this bill.
As many, the chair recognizes the member for Exumas and Ragged Island.
Speaker, Deputy, thank you for this opportunity. As the member for South and Central, Andros, spoke, someone passed me a message for him, but I wanted to verify first. So I'm happy to inform the country that Mr. Shane Gibson is a free man. We are grateful that the justice system works. We wish him and his family well, and we'll be praying for him. I know that the leader will have more to say on the subject. Mr. Speaker,
I happily speak on behalf of the people of Exuma and Ragged Island. I rise today to contribute to this bill. And I want to inform that the people of Exuma and Ragged Island will not be happy with me if I voted for increasing light bills at this time. All I heard today, Mr. Speaker, was an admission of failure as it relates to BPL. There's a lot of talk and smoke and mirrors about the previous rate reduction bond, a lot of talk about the PLP. This government is a master of distraction. It's now tired. It's tired, and people see it for what it is, distraction by a lost administration that accept blame for nothing. The public can see through it. And they've experienced a summer of blackouts and an ever-shifting narrative of what others did, all wrapped up in a blanket of unaccountability. There is no one in this House who should be under any illusion that the public reposes any more trust in this government on this issue. There's no trust left in this board, no trust left in this cabinet to speak on this issue. The Bahamian people don't believe much that you say. So when you go off with all your distractions, the good news is Bahamian people ain't listening to you no more. Nothing said can be taken for what it is, because nothing said ever materializes as it's forecasted by this administration. So here's what I heard today. One, there's new borrowings, $650 million for BPL. Two, there's a new tax on the Bahamian people who are consumers at BPL to pay it off. And three, light bills are going up. And yeah, they also try to make you believe that this F&M cares about the people. Well, cry me a river. And I'm delighted, Mr. Speaker, that the member for Kalani agrees that this is a tax. He said on the 24th of November in 2015, consumers are already paying VAT on electricity. They're paying VAT tax and everything. And now we are going to have another tax, a bond reduction rate tax. I don't care if you call it a fee, whatever you want to call it, it's a tax.
Remember your.
I will lay it, Mr. Speaker. The Tribune, November 24th, 2015. And then the member for Carmichael said.
Give me the date again, Exumas. You said you're gonna table it. What was the dates again, please?
November 24th, 2015. I'll lay it when I'm done for you.
Which newspaper?
The Tribune.
Carry on.
Thank you for giving me my time back for that intervention, Mr. Speaker.
Carry on, smart.
And then the minister today, the member for Carmichael, in his presentation on page 16, he said, it must be imposed on all customers in accordance with the legislation, regardless of the financial condition of the utility company. He didn't say it would be optional. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, call it what you wish. This government...
Chair recognizes the member for Kalani. Sorry for Carmichael. Sorry.
Speaker, I indicated that the legislation that members opposite tax requires it to be imposed on every person. That's the point that I made. And it's important.
This is different. This one is different.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker. You sure? This is a mandatory fee, if you choose to call it that. It's a tax, Mr. Speaker. So let's just agree on that. Let's get that out of the way. Mr. Speaker.
Is your view that it's a tax?
my view, Mr. Speaker. I'm expressing my views, you know. I have 30 minutes to do so. I appreciate it. Page 16. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a tax, in my view, and borrowing on the backs of the Bahamian people. It's an ill-timed move. If the VAT hikes were not enough, the billions been borrowed, on top of the 500 million to be borrowed in the pipeline, the BPL bond will be the cherry on the top. So back then in 2015, VAT was 7.5%. You increased it by 60%. And then you now add this mandatory fee on the top. Mr. Speaker, I pointed out in the budget debate, and the member for Carmichael would recall, I pointed out in the budget debate that there was no mention of the impact of this rate reduction bond. The minister responsible said he didn't have time during the debate, despite 2 hours on the floor he had, to discuss this most important matter. You could have explained it then, but you didn't. Because as is the case now, there was never a plan. But yet this minister signs on to the whims of the board, even though they steamroll the Bahamian people. We could have had some time to deal with this transparently, but no. Not until now, when Bahamians are still reeling after suffering through a hurricane, that you bothered to tell the public that they're expected to pay for this. You wait until after you come to this house to say you're going to borrow $500 million, you then tell them that you also have this mandatory fee, aka tax, that the Bahamian people are going to have to pay. You wait until you tell the Bahamian people that the economy is forecasted to shrink. You wait until then, and then you tell them you're going to put a tax on them. You wait until you tell them that unemployment is likely to go up, and even when you're unemployed, you still got to pay your bill, but then you put a tax on them.
That sounds like VAT. You don't put it on us.
Ill-timed.
Yes. Every tax is ill-timed.
Ill-conceived.
Everyone.
You wait until then, and then you do this to the Bahamian people. When their backs are against the wall. You hit them hard. You wait until mere weeks before the current bond expires. And then you go negotiate under pressure. And then you come. You said the bonds were expiring, the existing debt were maturing in December. You could speak to it. You could speak to it. Before you come, Mr. Speaker, with legislation for new building codes, before another hurricane season is upon us, before you implement Abaco and Grand Bahama as VAT-free zones, you come and you do this. It's disgraceful, Mr. Speaker. You made no mention of the rate reduction bond in your fiscal strategy report and its potential impact on the economy or the cost of living. Yet you put this on the Bahamian people without so much as by your leave, Mr. Speaker. Little public education, little public disclosure. BPL has yet to say before today what the details are of the 350. The minister gave a brief snapshot there of the spreadsheet, but no timelines. We want to hold you accountable. We have to hear it from the minister in wild contradictions to much that has been said before by the chairman of his board. The Bahamian people are being asked not only to settle BPL's legacy debt as the previous rate reduction bond was designed to do, but the Bahamian people are being asked to recapitalize BPL's new generation facility. So we asked, did you go to RFP? Do you have a plan? What about this new Wärtsilä plant? We will hold you accountable. When was the deal struck with Wärtsilä for the new plant? Has the government already ordered the new generation facilities? Did the Minister of Finance not stand in this very same room and say that the money has already been allocated to repair the electricity grid in Abaco and Grand Bahama from the IDB loan allocation? The Bahamian people must pay without their approval. Void of any accountability, while the rich get
tax breaks. One letter to the Minister of Finance gets him to roll back taxes on the residents of Life at Key, whilst the poor get steamrolled. One cry from big business, in particular, the largest grocery chain in the country, they got tax breaks when the business license fees were restructured. But I asked the poor and the middle class if they've seen the savings passed on. So the rich get tax breaks, the poor get steamrolled. Millions in tax revenue given up to big business, but now behemoths hurting, they must pay. Is the government under illusion that business will not pass this on to their consumers? Tell me how that worked out before on the clothing exemption. Tell me how it worked out with the VAT breaks on breadbasket items. This is a government that spent a year, 1 year, trying to figure out how to firepower secure, scrounging for reasons to terminate that agreement, when electricity prices and power outages had begun to stabilize. I carry no brief for Power Secure. Carry no brief for them. But at least they had a plan. They had a plan, Elizabeth. Power Secure had a plan. They had a plan. But you come today to borrow $650 million and you don't lay a plan on the table. No plan. No accountability. No transparency. Mr. Speaker, you're making it up as you go along. But you want the Bahamian people to trust you and allow you to borrow $650 million. That's what you want. Where is the plan of this current board to ensure more affordable, more reliable,
No plan.
and cleaner energy?
Yes. No plan.
We got a list of expenses by the minister today. And I don't know if we are to believe that in the absence of a plan. On August 17, 2018, the Minister of Works sat in the Cabinet office. Minister of Works sat outside the Cabinet that their number one priority of the new BPL board was to finalize the Memorandum of Understanding with Shell. Today, I don't know if he said Shell once. The MOU with Shell was signed in November 2018 by this administration's board, this government. Shell was supposed to build 220 megawatts of generation from an LNG plant at no cost to the Bahamian people. Now the Bahamian people must pay. And without any mention of Shell by the minister today. Nothing. Making it up as we go along. Are we all to forget what was said and what took place? Where has the new board and this government demonstrated the competence with regard to the running of BPL? Where's the accountability of the administration? Why should we believe anything they say? A fire at Clifton plant took place last September, destroying a massive generating facility, crippling another massive generator. The report on the fire was not tabled till over a year later. The report was finished in March. It was tabled maybe this month, perhaps last month. They say it was operator error. That's what the report said.
Where's the plan?
Was any discipline meted out to the operator? Was any operator held accountable?
The operator was directed.
Surely the CEO, who is still there, was not. Surely the board that is still there was not. Surely the minister was not. Because we know he would make a good AG. But the minister was not. He's still the Minister of Works. Surely this government was not. There's not no consequences yet, but they will. There was a fire in Bimini. We have not heard anything about it. There was no report. Was anyone held accountable? Was any of these incidents tied to the recent offering of separation packages of senior staff in that ill-fated VSEP program? How do we trust a company with $650 million that can hardly prepare for the aftermath of a VSEP? Who can have confidence in such poor decision-making? This government we cannot trust on this BPL issue. The Minister administration was the latest F&M administration to bring BPL into public disrepute. The nasty public spot at the firing of the board, the allegations, the counter-allegations which brought BPL credibility into question, the minister being sued, F&Ms fighting F&Ms. It pains my heart when I see that.
Chair recognizes the member for Carmichael. I don't know why I keep calling you Kalani. Sorry.
Speaker, Exuma, I don't like.
Order. Members, please. Let's hear Carmichael, please.
Speaker, I really don't like to interrupt Exuma because I like to listen to him speak, and I sincerely don't. But when you speak about something that is in contention before the courts in Parliament, that causes a challenge, and I'd be grateful if you wouldn't do that. Thank you.
I appreciate and respect the legal advice of the member of Carmichael, but I will not go there. But I will simply say this: the Bahamian people will be asked to pay for many of these incidences and mistakes, and the word he likes, incompetence of this administration government. He said it 10 times today.
I don't say that, man.
Mr. Speaker, I am submitting that the scandals that has impacted BPL will create some difficulty for this company in the marketplace. It will impact the ability to borrow. It will impact the cost of borrowing. I know the international financial markets. I'm familiar with Wall Street. They don't like scandals. They see a lack of competence and credibility and consider carefully how big a risk when they are about to offer financing. You think they ain't gonna use Google? I know Elizabeth and Exuma uses Google all the time. What do you think will pop up? Crisis, failure, lawsuit, board fired, incompetence. You would think, given the billions the opposite side has borrowed in 2 years, they would be familiar with how the markets work. The 5 C's of credit: character, capacity, capital, conditions, and collateral. Lenders use these all together to evaluate creditworthiness. Mr. Speaker, so if BPL is showing foreign investors a business plan, would it be so kind to show that business plan to the Bahamian people? Would it be so kind to bring that to the House Assembly, the board of directors of the Bahamian people? You must have an investment-grade business plan if you go in to raise money in the international market. You must have a prospectus. Would you be so kind as to share it with the Bahamian people? Lay it on the table. You claim that you're the government of transparency. Let us know what we're dealing with, Mr. Speaker. And then the minister says, oh, light bills will go up $20 to $30 per month. Is it for the person paying $100? Well, 30 would be 30%. 20 would be 20%. Too simplistic. We want to know how it's going to be determined, Mr. Speaker. That's what we want to know. Because we don't know the terms of the borrowing. We don't know the rate of the borrowing. We don't know the rating of the bonds. So we don't know what the increase is going to be. So the minister comes and says $20 to $30. Well, Well, 1% of 650 million is 6.5 million, Freetown. And we don't know whether it's going to be 2%. We don't know whether it's going to be 8%. But I tell you, my estimate is that light bills will increase by 15% to 23% as a result of this move, based on the information that I have. Now, when the minister provides me with the business plan and the prospectus and the details on the borrowing, I'll be happy to come back and revise that estimate. But that is what I expect will be inflicted upon the Bahamian people. And let's not forget, your administration increased VAT by 60%. So in 2015, when this idea was introduced, in 2015, VAT was 7.5%. You increased it by 60%. You borrowed billions of dollars. You got $500 million on borrow. Now you're going to borrow another $650 million.
We ain't got no downgrade.
On top of the 60% increase in VAT. That's what you're doing to the Bahamian people. Then you come here with some simplistic explanation. Some simplistic explanation.
Hey, members, order. Members, please. Let's hear Exumas, please.
Thank you.
Calm down. Yeah, I'm watching it, Exum. I'm watching it.
Thank you. And it's mandatory we pay, whether we like it or not. And why should we pay it when we are unclear on how BPL procures its equipment or its fuel? Why should we pay it unless we have more details? Why should we pay for their inefficiencies, their mistakes, and their incompetence? Why should the Bahamian people have paid for this?
How do you fix it
with no accountability to anybody else?
How do you fix it without funding?
And then you come to us and you ask us to pay.
How do you fix it without funding?
With a mandatory fee, a tax. Mr. Speaker, in 2015, VAT was 7.5%. You increased it by 60%. And then you come back and you want another 15 to 23% in my estimation on top of the 60% increase that you've levied upon the Bahamian people with your increase in VAT. Mr. Speaker, since we see no plans, we had no plans, we see no plans, we don't know what the end game is. We don't know whether the goals are achievable. They say it's a rate reduction bond. We don't know how the rate's going to reduce. There's no targets as to how the rates are going to reduce. There's none. And they say this rate increase can only last for 10 months, but
You can't believe that.
You can't keep the lights on. Why should we believe you? In the absence of a plan. Show us your plan, show us your studies, show us how you're going to reduce the electricity bills before you come to rely on the good graces of the Bahamian people to take another $650 million on their backs. This is an affront to the Bahamian people. At least explain it to them. Explain it to them. We are told that Shell is still in the mix, but we don't know how. The fire for which no one was held accountable. We haven't been told about the GE. And we don't know how what Scylla was determined. We got too many questions. The member for Kalani, who agrees with me that this is a tax upon the Bahamian people, talked about retiring the rentals. But we're doubtful about that too. We don't know how you're going to retire the rentals because you haven't explained it in detail to the Bahamian people. You're bringing on new capacity. You're bringing on new capacity, but is it adequate to meet the peak demands? the issues surrounding keeping the lights on, you got to speak to availability, you got to speak to reliability, and you got to speak to efficiency. And we have not heard those explanations today, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps, Mr. Speaker, in the absence of a tangible plan, I suspect the government and the board of BPL will continue to make it up as they go along. They talk about solar in the family islands, Mr. Speaker. We still haven't heard, Mr. Speaker. Let's talk with the people at BPL. You brought in Wasilla for new generation. But these engines are apparently too good for the staff of BPL to work on. So Wasilla gets to hire their own employees.
You know, we've been running it for years, right?
Now, if you tell me they're hiring Bahamians who know about running machines, who you think they're gonna hire? Well, they're gonna hire the best
You're making up noise for power.
and the brightest of BPL.
What happened to power secure?
They're gonna hire the best and the brightest of BPL.
What about power secure?
And then who is going to be left? Who is going to be left to maintain and repair the legacy BPL systems? Mr. Speaker.
The legacy now?
There's so many questions. You know what I'll do, Mr. Speaker? Under notices,
Yes.
I'm going to list the 40 questions that I have on this issue. I will share them with the Minister for Works, the member for Carmichael, because I believe the Bahamian people will not take lightly to this new task. At least you could do is explain it to them.
Okay.
Tell them why you're doing it.
Okay.
Tell them how you're going to get them out of this quagmire.
Okay.
Because at least the other people had a plan.
Okay.
It didn't work for Harbor Island.
This administration
It didn't work for Harbor Island.
comes,
It didn't work for Harbor
they
Island.
make it up as they go along.
And they broke it in
They firepower secure, which is a part of the plan.
Order, members, order,
They
order.
pick the pieces of the plan they like. And now we have a mishmash. They talked about the different companies who already, 5 I believe, different types of machines. So now we gotta add Wasilla to the picture. No plan. It's a mishmash. It's symptomatic of this government.
Okay.
No plan.
You need to help the Bahamian people. Help the Bahamian
No vision.
people.
No care for the Bahamian people. But yet you want to say, yeah, we're doing this to you, Bahamian people, because we care about you. I believe it was Kalani who said that. I almost wanted to shed a tear, Mr. Speaker. But the Bahamian people are sick and tired of having to carry the load and still having to suffer blackouts, inefficiencies, and highlight bills, Mr. Speaker. We have no details on the LNG plant. We have no details as to how you're going to make this more reliable. We got no details as to how you're going to retire the rental generation facility. And we had nothing about the pension plan. The minister didn't list the pension liabilities or the pension amounts in his spreadsheet, right? The unfunded amounts reminds me of BTC. They did a bad deal with BTC like this government tends to do, much like they did with Oban, much like they did with the Grand Lucayan Resort. Government of bad deals. F&M administration, bad deals. You see that picture if you look for bad deals in the dictionary. The BTC unfunded, now 160 million. We go down this road again. And we come to the Bahamian people for $650 million. We provide no solution to this problem that's going to continue to grow. So, Mr. Speaker, I want this government, and I'm wrapping up now, Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful. I want this government to articulate its policy on renewable energy 2030, 2040, 2050. And I don't want no sound bites. I want a cogent plan, because that's what the Bahamian people expect. And you know, the Bahamian people have no more confidence in this government. I think it'll be up to the next PLP administration to do more than just pay lip service to these issues. To do more than just pay lip service to the issue of climate change. How embarrassing we go to the United Nations and we beg the world to do better, yet we continue to burn dirty fuel. If we left to the PLP to create entrepreneurial opportunities from the renewable energy for the Bahamian people, left to the PLP to reduce the cost of living and reduce the cost of doing business, which will have a significant impact on GDP. This is a sad day for this Parliament, a sad day for the Bahamaland, and no doubt, based on the news we heard, this is a sad day for this administration, a very sad one. I promise you, the Bahamian people are not pleased. Exuma Ragged Island won't vote to support higher light bills. Because in Exuma and Ragged Island, don't have confidence that the blackout's going to stop. The people of Exuma and Ragged Island don't have confidence that you will keep the lights on. We don't have confidence that you're going to drive the rates down. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we're obliged not to support this. In the absence of a plan and the presence of the no confidence in this government. This is a sad day for the Bahamian people. A very, very sad day for the Bahamian people. And I do believe,
Exuma, I think you can wind up because your time is up.
Right now,
about a minute ago. Okay.
Right now, Mr. Speaker. But I gotta say this. I do believe, on top of the 60% increase in VAT, on top of the billions you've borrowed, on top of this new tax on the Bahamian people,
in your view, Exuma?
I do believe this is your last straw. Last straw for this F&M administration, Mr. Speaker. Next PLP administration will lay out a cogent plan, and we will fix this. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Order, members, order. Before you sit, Exumas, you mentioned yes.
Tribune article.
And while you tabling this, let me note something while you tabling this. I'm not a fan of the practice that some members have in referring to the documents and then tabling it after their speech. Because if you're referring, and especially when you're mentioning a member in the House, that document should be tabled almost immediately so that it could be viewed by the members in case they have some issue with it. So just for the record, when, at least for me, when I'm in this seat, members, when you're going to table documents, you're going to table it immediately after making reference to it. Because there may be something in the document that a member or someone else might take issue with. And after you sit and have already, it's already said and your speech is done, there's very little that can be done. So, Exuma, I'm not making this point. I'm sorry I'm making it while you're on your feet, because other members may make it. No, please. I'm making that point. And one other point while you're on your feet, members. I share the view of the Speaker. If you, whether you're on the government side or opposition side, if you view this particular bill as a tax, then you have to say it is in your opinion, because you share the view of the Speaker. It's not a tax. So if you're going to try and say that you believe it's a tax, say I believe it's a tax. The member for Exuma.
Mr. Speaker, I truly admire the diligence you bring to that rule. And I'm now laying the Tribune article of November 24, 2015, and I take the advice that it's good to do this at the time. But I just want to refresh your memories that this is the article where the member for Kalani said, I don't care if you call it a fee, whatever you call it.
Order of the document be brought up. Members, please. Order. Order that the document do lie on the table. As many. The chair recognizes the member for Senance.
This is no new debt.
The chair, the Senance will yield. The chair recognizes the member for Southern Shores.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to, in light of the time, I want to move that the business of the House go beyond 7 p.m. this evening.
It's been moved and seconded that the business of this House carry on beyond the 7 o'clock hour. As many members that are in favor remain seated, those opposing will rise. It's moved that this business of the House carries on beyond the 7 o'clock hour. The chair recognizes the member for Senance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is indeed been an interesting debate today where the presumptive leader of the side opposite has categorically stated that the PLP will not support the bill, whereas the speakers beforehand did not say which way they were going to go. So I just start off by saying that. And he made this point about a plan. Power Secure had a plan. It has been tabled in this way. When the member for Carmichael did his opening address, he laid out in very particular order, and if you take time to listen, that, for instance, $321 million was in legacy debt, to which prior in the bill, the 2015 bill, the member for Cat Island says there is no new debt. So we have to balance. Who can't trust who? The previous minister, the member for Cat Island, said there is no new debt in the 2015 because it was legacy debt.
Any point of order?
So you see there was $321 million that was there. Now, put that against the background of what Carmichael said. It was, BEC was making money up to a certain point. You know, many years ago, Southern Central Island, like to talk about the old days. The old days, each settlement had their own power station. Government bought them all up. And which government, this is a simple question to answer, which government was responsible for finally putting BEC in every single island in the Bahamas? F&M. And they did all of that, and we were still cash positive. We were still making money. The then minister under the PLP tinkered with the bond reduction, with the bond rate, the bonds with the basket of, he came and tinkered with that, and it was a wrong decision. It was a bad decision, and it went against him, and the rates went up, and of course, we started to lose money. We never recovered. So we have $321 million of legacy debt. Let me just go back. Let me go back and flip back. When this government took over, we have had successive governments who increased the national debt. What they don't say, because they don't like giving credit for good work, is the member for East Grand Bahama has successfully brought in a plan, pre-Dorian, which was going to reduce the national debt. And we have reduced the national debt and have paid off a lot of bills. Some $200-odd million in back bills have been paid off by this government. Incurred, so as not to be political, because I'm, incurred by successive governments. But this government, the F&M government, decided to take the heavy load and reduce the national debt, hence reducing the interest burden on the backs of the same people they're saying we don't have any care for. Which means once you reduce the debt, you reduce the interest rate, which means you have more money to spend on the needs of the people with the same tax bracket you have. Even though they won't admit they increased VAT by 750%. We didn't have VAT before. They brought it in, and they were scared they were going to bring it at 15%. And they didn't pull the trigger on that. They were scared. They were scared because they had it dead straight. They had it written in black ink. We're going to go for 15%. Now don't back off that because the member for Exuma wasn't there. He didn't know. It's 15%. That's what they were going to do. 15%. You see? You see? So, not only that, I'm just going to give you a couple bulletproof examples. So the member for Freetown goes and inherits the, what is it, NAD. NAD. Yeah, man, this Santa Claus. 13% interest was the rate you guys, the PLP could achieve on those debts. 13% they were paying. And he went and renegotiated it down to, what was it, 7.5%. What does that? Now, come on. Who can trust who? Because you see, the difference there was, that was debt that people didn't believe in. So they put the rate up high. What is BEC doing in this bond reduction? It is producing an animal, called the rate reduction bond, whatever we call this, which attracts sovereign rate debt of some 7%, as opposed to the, probably 5% actually, as opposed to the multiple. There's about 7 different loans at BEC at the moment, all attracting probably 10, 12, 13, so that in this thing, we are reducing the interest BEC someone is going to pay, and that isn't doing something good for the Bahamian people. Come on. That's where they can't, that's where they don't appreciate their own maths, even though they're accountants. Mr. Speaker. Yes. Yeah. Mr. Speaker. So we are, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are instituting a system which will convert that sovereign debt the legacy debt into a sovereign debt at a lower interest rate. More benefit for the people of the Bahamas. Then, just to go slightly sideways, BEC's traditional problems, and the minister has said it many times, and everyone who follows BEC knows it, is 1, generation, 2, transmission, and 3, distribution. Forget Hurricane Dorian. We have an old plant, and we went through that 60-year-old plant. Some of us at 60 plus are still running in pretty good order, but that's because we went to the doctor and we took care of ourselves. But if you don't maintain it, you know, many years ago, BEC called a local company up, and they said we have to cut off one of the big generators at Blue Hill. Because it was a cat, because we have not repaired the kitten, the starter motor. So we never cut the generator off because we didn't fix the kitten, so we could never start the generator again. And they never fixed the generator. I'm not sure which administration's on it, doesn't matter. But we know there have been tremendous problems with maintenance at BEC. And a lot of it has been, we also had periods where BEC, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, have been unable or come very close to paying their fuel bill because we were short of cash flow because of bad decisions, and what if you want to say by successive governments, I don't mind, but legacy decisions. So this is where all of that comes in. So we're trying to solve that issue. So you had to come up with some scheme whereby fuel was purchased some way and it got into BEC, and you know there was some things in there that we still need to investigate. Then the member for Carmichael goes on to tell you, because these guys said we ain't doing nothing, no plan. $28 million for solar in the Family Islands. Sound like a plan to me. 28 million solar. 15 million in upgrades in the Family Islands. Again, upgrading the service, getting better service, reducing the rate. 24.7 million in new substations to replace the old, inefficient ones. Capital injection, which hasn't been done in years. 14.3 million in Eleuthera. You know, there were days in Eleuthera where one government forgot to fill the diesel tank, and Harbour Island was left without diesel. All they had to do was pump the tank full. Now that's a fact. You don't blame a government for that. He had to go and get the truck and fill the thing up and get the power back on. You know, so these are all things that we've had, and they don't worry about us going back because successive governments have been faced by challenges of generation, transmission, and distribution. Then we sit in here and we complain about blackouts. I think it was Minister Blackout Pete. Didn't that what they called Vincent Pete at one point? And then they called Frank something else. And successive ministers responsible for electricity have been called some nickname to do with blackouts. And we complain about that. But now the government of the day comes to fix that, and we complain we don't want to go with it. But none on the other side have suggested anything as another way of resolving the problem, having first suggested except one member saying bring in some people who could run the place, which says these people can't run the place. So they brought in a plan in 2015. They stand here today and say that ain't a plan. We ain't got a plan. So you know, let's deal with it. One issue, Mr. Speaker, we have to deal with, and this is on a serious note. Bahamians have got to get used to paying bills. If there's $80 to $90 million, the member for Carmichael said, if I wrote it down correctly, 90 to 100 million in delinquent bills. Most of that is probably the government. He didn't give us that sense. So the government has to pay its own bills to BEC. And traditionally, over the years, government hasn't been paying those bills to be like people don't pay NIB. So people have got to get used to paying their bills. When I first came into the House of Assembly, into cabinet government, Mr. Speaker, I got given a long foolscap sheet of paper, used as supply lovers and family, that I could write anyone's name on. And my water, my electricity, my telephone would never get cut off. First thing the then Prime Minister England did was tell us all to rip up the sheets. And that's where part of your $90 to $100 million comes. We all know of people who have not paid their light bill, and they got the lights shining big and bright. So this $30 million they're going to borrow for new meters, which was recommended in the plan, the same Power Secure plan, if they bother to read it, was so that we don't have people have to physically go out in the field, oh, I didn't find that meter, or the meter was defective, or it didn't get cut off. So you will be able to regulate your electricity bill by looking up on it online. And water's coming too. The Water Corporation can do the same thing. So if you think you're going over your rate, you can know what to do. So if you don't pay your light bill, you get cut off. And unfortunately, that sounds hard, and I know people will criticize this member for saying it, but if we're going to get BEC, BPL out of this difficulty, we have to pay our bills. Now, what the member for Carmichael said, and unfortunately Cat Island didn't hear properly, was it's $20 to $30 will go on average, whatever, on the bill, whatever that rate is. The FNM know the pain of not delivering on their promises. We started a road network, and all the public did was cuss at us for this road dug up, that road dug up, the next road dug up, and we lost the election on dug up road. They even have a song, you know, Ingram dig up all the roads, you know, dig up, dig up, dig up.
They ain't complaining now.
Nowadays, everywhere you go, them roads good, you know? So we know the cost of failing to deliver on our promises. And in 2.5 years' time, 3 years' time, if the BEC rates haven't come down, the voters will know what to do. That's a very simple issue. But I can bet if you're improving efficiency, if you're lowering your interest rate, if you're improving your debt collection, these are all part of what did Zuma call them? CCC&C? All these accountants doing whatever. Collectability, competence, capability. All of them is what is being shown by the current administration. Now, you know what? Since those Watzilla plants have come in, they got character too, because, anyway, since those Watzilla plants, the BEC blackouts have gone down dramatically. I think the minister will probably tell you winding up, we went for at least 2 weeks without a power cut, which is making progress. And then Zuma says we're hiring people from Watzilla to fix the engine. You should remember that there were engines they bought that could only be fixed, I think, was it, Mr. Carmichael, by Man Diesel, or one of those. They had to bring in their own people to fix it. Bahamians were not allowed to fix it. You know, the generator there. But not only that, anyone knows that when you buy a new generator, it is under warranty, and there is a warranty period there where the warranty will be defective if the person's authorized not to do warranty work. So you see, all these things, they stand up and they make this loud noise, but meanwhile, in the 5 years they were there before that, with the woulda, coulda, shoulda, they did zero. The man didn't lay any pipe, and he didn't fix BEC. So you don't come here and tell it. No power.
But they know that.
No power.
They know that.
No power.
So disingenuous.
So to talk about not trusting people and the Bahamian people, what the opposition did today, they should be ashamed of themselves for coming into this house to disagree with something they were going to do. Now tell me something, I'm not too good in politics, but if I was going to reduce the rate of BEC for 70% of the population 2 years before an election, why the heck didn't I pull the trigger? Because that would have been a sure win. I'd have gone out to the population and said, 70% of you all reduce the rate of electricity. That's what he said. That's what he said. But they didn't pull the trigger because they knew it wasn't, they would have difficulties with it, which they're trying to put onto us now, because they couldn't go to the people then and tell them there was going to be a rate increase.
They said free.
They actually, in some cases, they did say free. So at some point, that is how disingenuous they are being here today. Now, so I just leave that for BC. Mr. Speaker, I just take a couple minutes to go on another side issue. Once we talk about paying bills, we should do some other things with like national insurance. Because I know there are people like $500,000 who haven't paid their national insurance. They have taken the money out of the salaries of Bahamians and have not transmitted it on to national insurance. That is, that's criminal. I don't have to call any names. Because I asked the former Prime Minister, Mr. Christie, whether he had paid his national insurance. The next morning, Thursday, the inspector was in my office challenging me the next day. They were going to lock me up for standing in this place and questioning whether he did that. So let's, and if there are people that owe real property tax, the majority of the real property tax, I'm told, and they can correct me, is owned on commercial property, not residential property. So let's collect that. And every bit of this we start collecting goes to show that the people, unfortunately the Bahamian public have to pay it. And I understand they're strapped. But until we start collecting the debts and institute a system of responsibility, we will never come out of this curve. And BEC is doing that now so that you will have to pay. We have to find a way, and the BC has worked with those 5,000 odd customers whose electricity has been cut off. They've tried a payment plan, they've tried an agreement, and we've tried everything. It's a prepaid meter. They tell me, for instance, I think in the phone companies, a prepaid bill in the phone company spends more money than the postpaid because they are controlling the dollars they have in their market. When I went to school many years ago in England, used to feed the meter with, I think it was threepenny bits. Any of us my age would probably remember. And prepaid, you used to put in the meter and heat the water and put your lights on, and when you went out, the light went off, you come back home, you stick some stuff in the meter. Unfortunately, if we want some of these services, we're going to have to pay for them. And the days of having friends and lovers and family not paying their BEC bills. I had an electricity bill the other day. I couldn't get it cut off. It was in my name. I wrote BPL. I said, cut it off, please. They said, we sent in someone out to cut it off. The fellow who was supposed to cut it off never cut it off. So these are we know all of these problems exist. So the electronic meters will stop that from happening. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with those few words, I'd like to support the bill because, yes, now, I got to say something about Tannenbaum and Christmas tree. I cannot believe the member for Central and South Andros could be serious to think that people will not enjoy the Christmas season because of an extra charge on your light bill. Thank you, that's the point. That comes in after Christmas.
Then they could be proactive.
You know? In a case where the F&M government has taken VAT off of light bills. In a case where in Dorian and affected areas, they're not paying VAT and duty for the diesel they're having to use for BC to generate. BC has to make, in Abaco and Freeport has to produce multiple poles and everything else like that. And they complain about restructuring BPL so that we can serve the Bahamian people better. Mr. Speaker, the PLP, the opposition in here today should be ashamed of themselves for denying Bahamians the right to have a better life, a better quality of life, and one that is better for all Bahamians. I support the bill.
Thank you, Senance. As many, the chair recognizes the member for Englishton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy. I rise this afternoon or this evening, 7 p.m., to speak on behalf of the good people of Englishton on this issue that touches everybody basically in our country. And Mr. Speaker, I've listened very carefully to the speeches and the presentations. We just heard from St. Anne's, and I'm going to come to St. Anne's. But let me start with St. Anne's. First of all, I hear the member indicating we should be ashamed. Well, you know, I think the question is who should really be ashamed in this parliament, Mr. Speaker? And the Bahamian people will have a view on that, which may not correlate to what this member is saying. But I am not ashamed, Mr. Speaker, because we will not support this legislation. And you've heard it from the member from Exuma, you heard it from Cat Island, and you heard it from Andros, South Andros, Mangrove Key, and you heard from me, Speaker. I listened to the member for St. Anne's, and just to answer him right away about how we are trying to deprive the Bahamian people, etc., and all of this stuff. And I think he's setting up some contradiction that we had a plan and now we come in here with the same type of plan and we're seeking to not support it, and so it's some level of I'm not sure what the word he would use, but he said we should be ashamed. But I've been provided by the member for Cat Island, and he's very intimately familiar with this because he was the minister with portfolio responsibility at the time. And there are some significant differences in what is being proposed today in this parliament and what was being proposed by a prior administration. And Mr. Speaker, for example, you know, the member for Carmichael said that the increase would be in the range of $20 to $30 per household across the board. The prior administration did not have an across-the-board approach. It had a scaled approach where those who consumed less, which would probably be those at the lower end of the economic scale, would pay less. Not only to pay less, but that they would know that they would pay less. And they would go for a decline from $253 to $376 decline in their monthly bill. So this was an incredible feature. This was a decline in the bill, Speaker. The second issue, Mr. Speaker, is those, and then if you were using 600 kilowatts of electricity per month, then the increase you would see would amount between 355 or 2.7% of the monthly bill. And then you go down, and just to make the point, so there was not a blanket 20 or 30, and in fact, it was only the very high-end consumers that would have seen an increase at this point of about $40. And so it put the burden at the higher consumers, and it gave instant relief to those at the bottom of the spectrum. And so that's a fundamental difference than what is being proposed here. And so I say that. I heard the presentations of both the member for Carmichael and the member for Kalani. And I found the member for Carmichael's contribution very interesting because he spoke about the PLP. I counted it. Either spoke about it directly or alluded at least 20 times in his presentation. 20 times. And in fact, at one point, he described this as losers. And then I listened to the member for Kalani, and he had, again, extensive references to the PLP. I don't even want to go through the type of things he says. I mean, really, in truth, what it has to do with how electricity affects Bahamians, I don't know. But he went on and on about the PLP, the PLP, the PLP, and in fact, he went back to what he called the drug era of 1992. 1992. Speaker. He said 1992 in his presentation. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure what they believe is the relevance of that in a situation such as ours, where in this country we're facing a certain current and present reality. 1992 was quite a while. In fact, a lot of people were not even born in 1992, but they got paid like bills. And they're out of work, and they're catching hell. And so, Mr. Speaker, what we've seen in this Parliament really is, and we've heard it from other members on this side, deflection, obfuscation, and we even see some internal contradictions in the reasoning. The member for Carmichael, I looked at his presentation. I want to thank him for sharing it with us. He indicates that, he says, today, sir, we anticipate that the funds raised by the bonds will be used to refinance BPL's debt of $321 million to pay for the Wärtsilä Phase 2 power plant that we desperately need. But I was fortunate enough to see a prior, that's page 4 of your presentation. The member had intimated something different to the Bahamian people previously, and what he said was, I just want to find it quickly, he says the money for the project, sorry, yeah.
Organizers, come on.
Yeah, I just want, and I know this is innocent, but that's not read like that. Raised BPL's debt of $321 million. That's one. And then you see a pause, and then to pay for Wärtsilä plant.
Okay.
That we desperately need,
Okay,
and
yes,
then a pause, and then for conversion.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. So but it's not really germane to my point, because you had indicated some time ago.
Member, are you gonna reference a news article that you're gonna?
No, I'm going to remind the member of something he said, and he's sitting here. The member said, he said the money for the project, and the project at the time was this Wärtsilä project, the generators, and he said the money for the project will come from BPL's capital works that were deferred in favor of this new generation. So in a prior statements, the minister seemed to indicate that prior monies that were already allocated would be used for this. But here we're hearing in this Parliament that when we now have to do this for this purpose. And then, of course, you know, the member spoke about the load shedding, and I may have read this incorrectly also on page 6 of his presentation. But he indicates in there, and I just make sure, member, that I'm not missing some commas or full stops. But you indicate in here that, sorry, is it page 6? When you speak about the, oh yes, he said that, Mr. Speaker, that is the law they passed. That's us again. And he goes on, you go on, and then you say, that is why, you talk about all the things we did, even 3 years ago, and you said, that is why we had such a challenging summer, Mr. Speaker. That is why we all had to endure load shedding. And so the member seems to be suggesting that something that was done years ago has nothing to do with this administration. Almost 3 years there, you have management. We had 5 years, and 3 years is 3/5 of 5 years. We had, you know, almost as much as we had. But you don't want to take responsibility for anything. You want to go back to 1992. You want to talk the 80s. I didn't hear the 80s. I saw it in the, you know, you go way back. You said 80s? Yeah. In the 80s, even more people were not even born at that time. And actually, people born in the 80s probably heading for 40 now. I mean, you're talking about some serious adults now, and they don't know anything about what you're talking about. And certainly, they don't see the relevance of it for this critical legislation. And so you know, I find that reasoning really outstanding. You know, that you would seek to take astounding. That you would seek to relinquish any responsibility for your stewardship as ministers of government duly elected by the Bahamian people, and would instead go back to 1992, Speaker. Speaker, we heard, there's some facts on the table. First of all, one of the facts is that we heard some serious patting on the back in this Parliament by members who really are not in a position to pat. Let me just give some advice, because I've been there, done that. Don't pat until you do it, okay? You're patting yourselves on the back and you have nothing to point to, not a BPL, that gives any comfort level to the Bahamian people. So while you're talking about how bad and ugly the PLP is, be careful, because we need to see what it is that you are bringing to the table. And truthfully, we are seeing it. Because, you know, actually, after almost 3 years, you have a track record. That's the problem with time. You start developing a track record. You know, I had made a request for select committee in November of 2018, and it was to inquire into and investigate the circumstances surrounding the departure of the board at Bahamas Power and Light and the reappointment of the board, that was a new board, the state of affairs relating to the high cost of electricity, the impact of efficiencies in service because of the voluntary separation employee packages. Who remembers the VSEP? Who remembers that? Nearly $70 million in public funds in the VSEP. And I'm told by people who work there, they're overstretched, understaffed, working overtime, being pushed to the limit. But over almost 70 million in VSEP. The same people talking about how they're prudently managing our money. And of course, we heard from the member for Cat Island. They did that, but then on the other hand, they've taken on almost 10 or 7 to 10 people at huge $100,000, $200,000 annually. The same prime minister right here, the same member for Kalani, who told the Bahamian people, that he would never hire a public servant over 100,000. We don't have a problem paying people what they're worth, but I have a problem when you say one thing and you do the next, especially before a general election. I have a problem with that, Mr. Speaker. And then it goes further. We asked for the circumstances relating to the request for proposal, relating to the engagement of Shell North America. And of course, we've heard that raised on this side also. The basis of the complaint. Do we remember the complaint by General Electric? I think the American government got involved on this issue. Do we remember this? This is under their watch. It's called a track record. We don't have to go back to 1992. Let's stay right here and see what we're dealing with, Speaker. And then it speaks to and then we ask for powers to send for persons, etc. So we know, and this was a year ago. But then since then, we've seen additional missteps. We had a fire. We had fires, but there was one particular fire that took on a special type of prominence in our national life, and the report has been laid in this Parliament. And the report speaks about what they call operator error. Operator error. And I just want to say, I don't know the facts. Of course, you hear some things, especially in the BPL mix. But we'd like to know if there was an operator who performed some error that led to such a serious situation. Whether, because normally there's some negligence, whatever it is, there's some accountability. It's the way it is. And so we'd like to know whether there was any accountability. And if there was none, and I don't think there was none, because by this I'm submitting there was none. So why not? Why was there no accountability? Is there more to this story than meets the eye? That's my question for the member. I would be grateful if he could help us with that. Because you see, we don't need anyone to come in here and paint this lovely picture, this beautiful painting, because the facts are speaking something very, very different, Mr. Speaker. And so, along with we look at the issue of even the mere introduction of what Silla raised question at the time. And then, we've not seen what has been agreed with Shell. There's a lot of murky, non-available information about I heard the member for St. Anne's talking about all these things. But we'd like to know, you want the Bahamian people, the average person on Miami Street, to pay $20 to $30 more every month in that household. Minimum wage, by the way, minimum wage. But you're not able to come and say what it is you are doing with their money. I have to tell you, based on my walking around and just ear to the ground, social media, the Bahamian people don't feel like putting that kind of money in the hands of this administration at BPL, because there's a track record which says that it is a major concern. Let me put it like that. There's a major concern. So, Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the other problem you have, so the point I'm making is that this is not about 1992. It's not even about the PLP, because that's done. When the Bahamian make a decision and they move on, they don't need a government to sit there every day whining and whining and whining. They'd like to know, what is it that we have elected you to do, and what are you going to do? So forget 1992 and all of that. The question is, what are you going to do? Secondly, we now know BPL has a track record, and it's one of that's raising great concern in this country, because the main issue is you can't keep the light on. Honestly, I mean, I know some may have generators. I know Member Carmichael said he don't have no generator. I don't have none. And I can tell you, it's almost surreal. You drive into a neighborhood and it's just jet black. You're in your house. Lord, please don't let no mosquito be there and don't let it be hot. Hours in communities throughout New Providence, there's utter jet blackness. That's the major issue. You can't deliver the electricity to a consumer in this country, Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, you have a track record at BPL. So we don't need to hear about anybody else. We got to talk about what you're doing, and we have a concern. But the other thing, Mr. Speaker, is that you have a credibility issue. I think the member for Exuma said no one really believes anything you say. They said you see your mouth, your lips moving, but you know they're a little skeptical. Is that what you said, Exuma? Words to that effect? Close enough. I'll tell you why I say that, you know. But before I get to that, on the issue of the increased taxes, or whatever you want to call it, you don't want us to use the nice language of tax. Then we'll use whatever word makes the Free National Movement happy about putting added cost to the cost of living to the average Bahamian in this country. And we know it's going to have an effect, because we heard from and I can lay this, we heard from Dr. Donovan Moxey. I only want to lay it to make the point, because he knows better than us. He's telling the people to brace yourself. You know this when you got to brace yourself?
Reference the
it's the Tribune,
yes.
And it's dated 27th of November. No, sorry, that's when it was 7th of November. He said, brace yourself. Brace yourself. That is what BPL telling the average Bahamian. Brace yourself. So Bahamians know what's going on, you know, and they know what they're looking at. So I hear the pretty talk with all this. You got a track record. It's not impressive. In fact, it's worrisome. And now y'all telling us we got to brace ourselves. And then, of course, I don't normally really refer to these NGOs per se, because everybody has their view. But I want to quote him because I agree with him. And this is from The Guardian, and this is dated, what's the date on this? I'm looking for the date, but I'll lay in the date. It'll be evident on the face of it. It's The Guardian. Is that the picture? No. And this is what he says.
So what's the heading on it?
The heading on it is Aubrey, BPL rate reduction bond, hard pill to swallow. And what he says is, he says that,
Where you going, man?
You're not voting. You're not voting for it?
I'm trying to find the page on. Oh, here it is. Yes, this is what he says. And I want to adopt this because I really agree with him.
Let's vote tonight.
He says, this is what he says. He says, the proposed Bahamas Power and Light rate reduction bond is an ill-timed, hard pill to swallow that would only, listen to what he says now, further skepticism and mistrust of the government at this time. And that's all I want to quote from it, and I could lay it.
Part of the document do lie and be brought up.
I'll sign it, yes. I agree with him, because that's what's happening out there. See, you and some,
Order the document be brought up.
thank you, but, am I going to,
Yeah,
my
you
time? Okay.
You're good.
All right, thank you.
She's good, Kat, she's good.
Man, the Japanese say I good, so I good. What is it, 20?
It's a good speaker.
No, he's on the deputy.
The documents do lie on the table.
Thank you very much. So he's, that they're saying, first of all, BPL is telling us it could be rough. We in for a rough ride. He said, brace yourself. He ain't say you can have a little touch on something. He said, brace yourself. And then, of course, there is the issue that this will affect that debate. I think the premise of what that individual I just quoted from said, and I agree with him, is that fundamentally, fundamentally, there's already mistrust. And that's my case. There's already mistrust, and this will exacerbate it. It's become. And then, but then you have, and the point he makes, and that I make, that there's already mistrust. It's because you also have a track record on that too. This is the problem with time. You're 3/5 through your term. It's winding down, actually. You only got maybe a budget or two left. One?
Two more Christmas.
One more budget? One more budget. And so, it is what it is. You can't turn back the hands of time. But in the hands of time, this is what we've been dealing with. You increase taxes on the Bahamian people. You can't blame the PLP for doing that. I mean, you increased it. You did that. But you did it. But you know what really is the concern? Because I think Bahamians would have even forgiven you for that. But you did it at a time when, before the elections, you had such strong views about this type of thing. And I'm trying to find the quote because more than that, it was the I call it the flip-flop. Oh, I think this is it right here. I'm going to leave it. I have it right here. This is the Guardian, and it says, yes, it's the 4th of June, 2018. And the heading says, Turnquest attempts to clarify VAT flip-flop. But what he says in it, and he goes through his long explanation, about, before that he had talked about, he said that before he described VAT, he likened it to jumping off a cliff. That's what he said in opposition. He said VAT was like jumping. And this, he said at that time, they said the Nassau Guardian reminded Turnquest of his statement on November 24, 2013. What's the significance of 2013? The member was in opposition. And when he was in opposition, he said, we don't have to be like Barbados. We don't want to be like Grenada. We don't want to be like Haiti. We don't be like any of those countries. They are crying about VAT. St. Lucia is crying about VAT. We don't want to be like that. We're a prosperous nation. We have a lot to protect. So let's be careful. We don't have to follow the crowd. Everyone is jumping off the cliff. That's what he said in 2013. But in 2018, when he became Minister of Finance, he said, he goes on and he says that, trying to find his rationalization, he said that, in summary, what he said is that he actually commended the rollout of VAT in 2015 and said basically that it got companies used to paying taxes. And he saw this, he actually speaks about it in this article as a positive, VAT as a positive. No longer we jumping off a cliff and we will be like Haiti. It's now a positive in the scheme of things. These things raise credibility issues for politicians.
What are the documents we brought up? Order.
And then, of course, you said it was the people's time. That's
Order the document do lie on the table.
Thank you. That's what your theme was, the people's time. But of course, people now saying which people you're talking about, because one of the first things you did was talk about giving yourself raises. Giving yourselves raises. Remember that?
What kind of raise?
No, I can get to that. That was the first thing on the table. Give themselves higher salaries. Of course, that became very unpopular and it was rolled back. And then, may I have some water, please? And then, of course, they increased benefits to themselves. They gave themselves added perks as cabinet ministers, did not inform the Bahamian people, came out by happenstance in the budget debate. But the cabinet ministers now get free gasoline. No. We saw the tax breaks that came out of these budgets. The very wealthy, the big corporate entities in Grand Bahama. Like we saw, Rickey wrote a letter, and of course, there was some clarification of that after Rickey wrote the letter. They've undermined Bahamianization by the implementation or introduction of what they call the Commercial Enterprises Act. And then, of course, and we can come back to this, the Prince George Dock Agreement. They've given that away for 55 years. They've yet to lay a proper document to show the Bahamian people what they have done with the Bahamian people's assets. This asset belongs to the Bahamian people, not the Minister of Tourism, not the Minister of Transport, not the member for Kalani. Belongs to the Bahamian people, and we've yet to see that laid in this Parliament. And then there was the travel budget, and it's become an issue again in the national discourse. The Prime Minister, I have to remind you, you promised, you accused the then Prime Minister, Perry Christie, of all nature of things that spend the people money. And then you promised that you would account by December of 2018. We're now in December almost of 2019. No accounting, lots of traveling. In fact, I have been informed that not only are you traveling like there's no tomorrow, but that you have now done several increases, including increase for per diem for international travel.
How much?
It used to be 150, it's gone to 250 daily. Now the member for Caroline reminded me, the minimum weekly wage in this nation is $210, Mr. Speaker. $210, Mr. Speaker.
Say that again, but for them going to?
$210. So not only is there no accounting, despite the comments before the election when you're in opposition, no accounting, plenty travel, huge delegations, and increased costs. Now we know additional 4 million, what was it?
4 million.
4 million, additional 4 million. So all of these things, see, I'm just raising it to let you know you have a credibility issue. I think this is the point that Exuma was making. People can't quite accept what you say, because you say one thing, you do the next, and there is a credibility issue or deficit right now with this administration, Speaker.
People counting on you. Yeah.
And then, of course, I don't want to go through all of it. There's plenty. We're going to a budget debate. But the comments you made in the first budget, remember the $200 million you said the PLP gave to their cronies? Then you came afterwards and you said, I didn't know, that wasn't true. All of these things you put in the public domain which were not true, which sought to make some case that you were some pristine political influence in our national affairs. And every day it has been eroded through your own actions in this country, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the Bahamian people are experiencing a loss of confidence, and they are of the view that this administration is duplicitous, that you're disingenuous, and that your performance is dismal, Mr. Speaker. And now today, Mr. Speaker, you're further burdening the Bahamian people, Mr. Speaker. You're burdening the Bahamian people. After all of this, all of these fancy promises you made before the general election, all of these grandiose proclamations of who you are and what you represent, and then you have a track record. You have a track record, and the track record is causing even an organization like ORG, or whatever they call themselves, saying, I'm so sorry to tell you, you have a credibility issue, and this increase in this bill to the Bahamian people is going to make it worse for you. That's what he says, and I agree with him, Mr. Speaker.
I'm sorry.
So, Mr. Speaker, I will, and Speaker, there's much more, and I mean, I know you know, there's plenty. But I think the gist of what I want to say, and before I take my seat on behalf of the people of Angliston, is that the people of Angliston are not interested in you creating greater hardship for them. As we speak, many are out of work. Many are minimum wage workers with children and housing to deal with, and current BPL bills. $210. $250 per day. Speaker, cost of living has already escalated as a result of the implementation of increased VAT levying on the Bahamian people. You really cannot, I mean, truthfully, you really can't point to anything that's happened in this almost 3 years that can really be pointed to say, this is enhancing the quality of life. You've actually created a greater burden on the Bahamian people. And you know, the truth is, when you look at the travel alone, you have soared the waves. It's like no tomorrow. Like you are in one reality, and the average Bahamian is getting more and more worried about what's happening in this country. I mean, I sit here and I see the happiness and the patting on the back, Mr. Speaker. And you keep, you know, they keep talking about downgrades, Mr. Speaker. Keep talking about the downgrades. You know, can you imagine? You have a government, and they are down to one piece of rhetoric. We had no downgrades. However, people are not working, people are catching hell, you can't keep the light on, there is nothing in the pipeline that gives any hope to the Bahamian people. So while you're talking about the IMF and all those people, the Moody's and S&P, we got a Bahamas government. We have a Bahamas government sitting in here, Mr. Speaker, and they are talking about external agencies. This is what rhetoric has come to.
Anglison has the floor.
It has come down to a chant that we never get downgrade. But you know what they're doing? They're downgrading the Bahamian people by their policies, Mr. Speaker. We ain't worrying about what S&P do. We worrying about what you are doing to the Bahamian people, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, the bottom line now, Mr. Speaker, is the people of Angliston, they're not interested in any added burden in their lives. They're hoping that a government can come and bring something with sparkle and not continue to pile more and more and more and more burden on the Bahamian people, Mr. Speaker. The Bahamian people do not feel comfortable or happy, and in fact, they're most reluctant to put $650 million in your hands with the track record I just spoke to. I can't talk about the board because the member pointed out it's before the court. But that's something spectacular in itself. We've never seen that. Spectacular, Speaker. But it's one of many spectacular things that has happened at BPL in the very short time of this administration. BPL has been nothing more than a series of debacles, and we have watched it from the minute you took office to this moment. And there is no getting around that issue, Mr. Deputy. So, Mr. Speaker, as we will not support what you did, what you intend in this. It is not what we intended. We were giving those at the bottom economically a break and then going up a scale. No, you didn't do it. You could have gone with that, but you didn't go with that. You've gone with a blanket thing. So the richest amongst us and the poorest amongst us, it seems to be. The poorest amongst you didn't do nothing for. The richest and the poorest is a blanket. It's across the board. Yeah. So the poorest they have. You did nothing for. You know, consistent with their approach to how you deal with that, with the scale of wealth. You can tell by this right here, and it is differentiated by what they had on the table. You don't have to go with it, you know, but it gives you a clue as what you could do. You chose not to do that, so you've gone now, and you're going to treat everybody across the economic scale the same way, the richest and the poorest. So, Mr. Speaker, we will not support it. We're not ashamed. I feel very proud when I could stand up for Anglicem, Mr. Speaker, very proud. And they expect that of me. So we're not ashamed. And you know, the member for St. Anne's, that's another thing. Now, I'm not speaking to you, but the conflicts of interest in this government. The conflicts of interest. The conflicts of interest. I mean, it's a lot.
Listen, your time is up, but I'm going to give you a minute.
Right.
I see you going into something. I just given you a minute.
No, but I'm saying though, You know, the list is long. You have no credibility. What you say don't mean nothing. And could you stop talking about yesterday, the PLP, and the next one, the next one? The Bahamian people are only interested in one thing right now. They're interested in why you have given away Prince George Dock for 55 years. 55 years. 55 years. So, Mr. Speaker, when they will make noise in here, tell them come when they come, Speaker. And so, Speaker, the Bahamian people, well, I can tell you that the Bahamian people today are not pleased with this, what you have brought to this Parliament. The management of BPL does not warrant it in any confidence about the management of these funds, about all these plans you have. The plans you have right now, the 101 on the table, have not been managed in a way in which that brings confidence. Now you want to go to something more fanciful. And the Bahamian people just don't have the confidence, Mr. Speaker. So Engliston will not support it, nor will the Progressive Liberal Party, and we are proud to stand for the average Bahamian in this country. We will not support added burden on the Bahamian people at this time.
Thank you, Engliston. Members as many. Chair recognizes the member for Golden. The chair recognizes the member for Southern Shores.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I move that the business of this House suspends until 10 a.m. Thursday, 28th November, 2019.
Being moved and seconded that the business of this House suspends until the 28th of November 2019 at 10 a.m. As many members that are in favor remain seated. Those opposing will rise. It's carried that the business of this House suspends until 10 a.m. the 28th of November 2019.